Zadrizes Buzdaris Gosdau.
What's up, House of the Dragon lovers? Ooh, I'm just kidding. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sir Hunt's Reviews. My name is Mark, and in this live stream, we're gonna be tussling around, having some sex virtually. We're gonna be discussing a massive amount of topics and subject matter. I got like 5 or 6 questions submitted to me on Patreon. Speaking of which, if you're watching this right now, it's monetized. You probably just saw an ad play, but as soon as it ends, it's going to be demonetized. So please go join my Patreon. For $1, you'll get access to, I think there's like 21 episodes of an audio-only exclusive podcast. Now, to be fair, I have uploaded the most recent Breanne episode to an RSS feed. But that's probably the only time I'm going to do that because I can't upload again to RSS feed without paying for it. I'm not doing that. That's insane, right? So consider checking out my Patreon. You'll get exclusive access to that type of content that's only there. It's called Leaks and Lore. It's an audio podcast right now. Eventually, it's going to be video, right? And then also, you get prime choice on topic submissions. And if you join the right tier, you can even join me for one of these live streams. All right. So to start out with, I am probably like 40 minutes from finishing Clash of Kings. So I'm going to talk about that for a bit, and then I'm going to jump on to the Patreon topics. But there's some things that I've been tweeting about. If you follow me on Twitter, you know exactly what the fuck I'm about to talk about. But I usually, either for making videos or for these streams, I'll tweet stuff as I'm reading and listening to whatever Song of Ice and Fire book is of the couple of week session that I'm in. I've read all of them 7 times, right? Except for World of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood, and Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I've only read those. Fire and Blood I've read twice, right? To be fair, I've broken it down and listened to many, many sections more than 7 times, right? But all the way through twice. And then the Dunkin' Egg stuff like 3 times. And that was actually the first Song of Ice and Fire book that I actually like read all the way through, right? So getting back on track here. Clash of Kings, right? So couple of things, right? Daenerys is in the thumbnail. We will be talking about Daenerys quite a bit in this. Oh yeah, by the way, before I forget, this is a custom t-shirt. You can buy it right now. It's linked down below for $25. I priced it so that I make, I think, $7.54 off of it. The newer shirts I put up there just so that I'd make $3 off of it. The problem is the hosting store Teespring charges an immaculate amount of money as the base price. So the least I could put the shirts out for and not make a profit is $19. There's a lot of other people that sell merch, sell shirts for $19 or $20. So until I can figure out how I'm going to make the shirts myself or move to another store, check out Teespring. I designed this myself, and I'll break it down real quick for you. So the dragon, right? The dragon part of it represents Caraxes, because Caraxes is my favorite show dragon. It's obvious, right? Caraxes, and then all the other ones right there. Vagar too, right? And then the bricks, that is something that's not necessarily related to House of the Dragon. And I know that it is. It's in the same world. I know this shirt is listed as Hot D or whatever. The Dragon House, I think, is what I named it. But the bricks symbolize the red bricks of Astapor, which is the city that Daenerys frees over in Slaver's Bay, right? The saying goes that brick and blood built Astapor, brick and blood her people, right? So that's what the red bricks represent. The dragon overcoming that is Daenerys freeing all the slaves, right? And then you have the House on the Fire, right? This right here. That's House Targaryen is burning currently. There's only 2 people alive in House Targaryen that are somewhat legitimate, right? Daenerys and Jon Snow. And then also the drop of blood is the symbolic connection between dragons and House Targaryen. All right, so yeah, check that out, please. Like I said, if you go buy that, I'll make like $7 off of it. So that's awesome if you're a fan of my stuff. And also, I'm gonna be try to wear custom shirts every stream, right? Okay, so Arya 10. Let's talk about that, right? So let me read my notes here. She's in Harrenhal, and here's Nymeria. After praying to the old gods, she's at Harrenhal, and it's supposedly haunted. Also, she becomes a faceless man and kills the guard on the tower by the old. I dropped my coin bit. Explain the TV show. Okay, so in the TV show, right, season 3, Arya escapes Harrenhal via the help of Jaqen Hagar. In the books, not the case. Jaqen is long gone, right? So there's this dude, Amory Lorch. He's a jerk ass, okay? We'll just say it, we'll keep it PG. He's a giant jerk ass. He lays siege to... I talked about this in my Patreon podcast, but I don't know if I might have mentioned it in my last live stream. Arya has this really awesome scene next to the God's Eye where she's holding out at this hold fast, and then it's attacked by Gold Cloaks members, and she's with Yoren and Hot Pie and Gendry, and they're fighting everybody, and she's killing people, and she yells for Winterfell. So Amory Lorch is the guy leading the garrison, attacking them. Yoren dies. Yoren beats Arya, and it's funny because Arya beats herself when she's praying to the old gods in Harrenhal, and she sees like the red eyes, and she literally starts talking to her father, Ned Stark. Kind of. It really is probably Brann from the future, because in this same book, Brann reaches out to Jon Snow from the future and opens Jon's third eye when he's playing peekaboo on the wildlings. So he's like laying on this cliff, and Brann reaches out to him from the future, right? Jon starts to have this vision, and he notices that the face in the tree looks like Brann. And then he realizes, oh shit, it is Brann, but his voice is much older. And he tells Jon, don't be afraid. Anyway, he ends up touching Jon, opening up his third eye. And then Jon has a even more of a connection with Ghost after that. But this is probably what happened to Arya in the scene that I'm referencing here. When she sees these red eyes and she starts talking to the old gods, it's probably Brann. He tells her, look, don't be afraid. Arya pretty much regains her courage in these moments. What is the whole point of this? What am I getting at here? I'll get it. Give me a second. Okay. This was silly, right? I just wanted to talk about it because even though she doesn't have Nymeria next to her, Nymeria is still out there. Nymeria's got the super pack, right? All of the Stark children, we don't know for sure Robb, but we can assume when we hear about his connection with his direwolf Greywind, right? All the Stark children have connections to the old god through their direwolves. Now Brann, right, is becoming an old god. Brann is becoming a god, right? So in A Song of Ice and Fire, gods are real. And at the time frame that we're in right now in the main series, they're all dead, right? So I'm not saying they can't come back, but I'm saying in the time frame that we are right now, they're all dead. That's why magic is down and all that shit until Daenerys brings back dragons in the first book, and then more and more magic starts to come out into the world. So the fire god has been reborn. Brann, the old god, had died, right? I know this sounds crazy, but you really got to read A Song of Ice and Fire. I promise you, it's fucking amazing. So Brann is the rebirth of the old gods. And when he finally becomes an old god, his siblings' connection to the old gods is even better. So what I'm getting at here is that Arya, right? Super random, not really related to all the stuff I just talked about. Arya will be allowed to leave the Faceless Men. Not allowed to, but her connection with the old gods will save her. Okay, so literally, now I'm kind of getting it, right? So in the TV show, she has Jaqen help her escape Harrenhal. In the books, Jaqen's already gone, so she has to do that herself. And in those moments, she becomes a Faceless Man. She's literally a scared little girl, and then she puts on the face of someone else, right? So she basically, she gets Hot Pie and Gendry. Gendry's a blacksmith at Harrenhal, so he gets them some swords. Arya is a cupbearer for Roose Bolton, so she's got his tunic, so she's able to go to the stables and have 3 horses saddled for them. Hot Pie works in the kitchens making hot pies, and he takes food with him to go. So they're all getting ready to leave. It's Arya's job to allow them to cross through the gate. So she makes her way up the tower and gets this bannerman. She steals Roose Bolton's dagger and then also a sheepskin map, right? So she's about to use the dagger to kill this guard, but then she realizes, oh shit, the guard is way taller than her. She's actually a little girl. Fear starts to take over her, and then she can't even figure out what happens, but basically she just speaks these words, and because the guard's like, what the fuck are you doing up here? Roose Bolton, what are you doing, right? Basically, he sees this little girl with the Roose Bolton sigil, and he's like, what are you doing, right? And then she just starts lying out of her ass. She goes, Roose wanted all of the guardsmen to have a piece of silver. And she thinks to herself, oh, that's nonsense. he'll never believe this, but silver is silver. So the guardsman is like, oh, okay, well, let's have it. Give me the silver. And so she reaches in her pocket and pulls out the coin that Jack and Hagar gave her, right? And she thinks, oh, in this light, this will look like tarnished silver. So then she goes to hand it to the dude, and then she drops it. And then as soon as she drops it, well, he leans down to pick up the monies, and then she stabs him in the neck. Bam! Stabs him in the neck, right? And the chapter is so savage because it ends with her mounting her horse to escape Harrenhal, and she thinks, my hands are sticky, but the rain will wash it away. Crazy. Yeah, that's what happens in Arya 10, Clash of Kings. All right, so more of what I meant there. The fact that she has the old god, and you're probably like, who's the old god? Well, the fire god, R'hllor, right? That's for the Targaryens, people of fire, people with dragon blood, right? The old god, there's so many of them. They've been around for so long. They've lost all of their names. No one alive right now can remember their names except for the free folk, and that's an old tongue. And not everybody really speaks the old tongue. The first men used to, but they forgot. So now it's only the giant and free folks, children of the force, and anybody associated with the old god. One thing is for certain. Okay, there's for sure a god of death. There's a storm god. It's like the water god, right? There's a fire god. There's a dragon god, right? Kind of twined into. There's also a god of death. The Northmen would sacrifice to their god. And how did they do it? They would give their god of death. They would put, sacrifices, right? So people they killed in the hollowed out mouths of the faces carved into the weirwood tree, and that's how they would appease their god. So what I'm getting at here is the old god very much is the god of death. When Arya's in Braavos, and she's in the House of Black and White, she sees a northern statue carved there. She's like, oh, this looks like the weirwood tree. So where she's at right now, all of the faiths are practiced, right? They're all kind of worshipped in Braavos, but ultimately, the one true god is that the only thing is certain in life is death. So Arya will be allowed to escape the Faceless Men because she's still working for the Faceless Men because she's a chosen one of the god of death. And Breanne is the god of death, and he's got servants, and Arya is one of his servants. Whoa! Sir Hunts, you're on one, dude. Oh, man, I'm giving myself all types of accolades. But yeah, so let's move on to Daenerys, right? And this will be the last thing that I talk about before I jump on to the Patreon questions, all right? I'm going to sip my McDonald's tea. Oh, yeah, speaking of which, link down below. Please, go grab one. I know $26 is a lot of money for a t-shirt, but the base price on Teespring for a t-shirt, so that like I don't have to make it myself or pay for shipping or any of that stuff, is $19. So I marked it for $26, so I'll make about $7 or $8. Eventually, I'll be making the t-shirts myself. Already have a P.O. box. It's a process. Oh yeah, before I forget. I'm giving away some art. I've been doing that every week. This week, this is the original, but I have enough ink to print one copy of that. I'll be giving that away in a little bit. Make sure you're subscribed publicly. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram, and are obviously watching right now. And that's all you got to do to win. There's no website that you got to go to sign up and give all your information to. No, already have all of your information through YouTube. What was I just talking about? Oh yeah. Okay, so Daenerys, right? Now, I kind of hyped this up and I feel bad, right? I had a bit in my head last night. I was a little bit of microdosing on some psilocybin. I was like, yo, this joke is going to be hilarious, right? It'll be so funny. And then when I woke up this morning, had a hard time going to sleep last night, I forgot the joke, right? But the point that I wanted to make is still there. So, in Daenerys, did I have it written down? Fuck. It's like Daenerys doesn't have that many chapters in the Clash of Kings. It's like Daenerys 4 or maybe Daenerys 5. Oh, wait. I tweeted it on Twitter. Yes, I did. It is Daenerys 4. Right? Daenerys 4. Daenerys 4. Twitter, what are you doing? What are you doing, motherfucker? Okay, Daenerys 4, Brass Salesman, tomorrow stream. All right, so yeah, Daenerys 4, okay? This is the chapter where Strong Belly Bill was in Old Barry Selmy. Barack Obama's in this now. Barristan Selmy under the guise of not himself, right? They start approaching Daenerys in a trader's market in Karth, right? When Daenerys goes to this trader's market, she's got Jorah with her. And it's really interesting because Karth is this city where Daenerys is promised all of these lovely things, but she gets not a thing in return. What I mean by that is like Xaro Joan Daxus, this idiot, right, with his nose piercing and his bejeweled jewels, right? He's like, "Oh, Daenerys, I love you, Daenerys. Please give me a dragon, Daenerys. Let's get married and we will make a babies." But then she's like, "Dude, no," right? And then he says, "All right, fine, get the fuck out. I'm tired of feeding you and your family of Dothraki savages. Get out," right? So then she leaves. And also, when she first gets there, she's revered. Everybody wants to see her dragons. They give her gifts. They literally give her like gold trinkets, silver. She's given this crown. If I'm not mistaken, this is where she gets an actual crown that's made out of onyx, jade, and lapis-lazuli, or something like that. But it's the most badass crown in all of A Song of Ice and Fire because it's got 3 heads of the dragon on it. One of them, the ivory one, is representing Viserion. Then you have the black onyx one that's representing Drogon. And then you have the emerald, I think it's jade maybe. That dragon head is representing Rhaegal. So that's really cool. So she's given all these things. And eventually she has the House of the Undying experience. And when she has the House of the Undying experience, everything changes, right? So when she's in there, in short, if you want a breakdown on it, that's actually something that I just started recording this morning. It's going to be uploaded on my Patreon, I think on Tuesday, either Tuesday or Wednesday. And you can join for $1. It really helps me out. YouTube's algorithm, shadow banning, videos not getting promoted, all that stuff is a real thing, right? I've just not mentioned it as much in my most recent videos because it gets annoying to I can't just jump into doing a video. I got to do that thing. Like, it really helps my channel out, and it's awesome to promote myself, and it helps defeat the shadow ban, but also people probably get sick of hearing that shit. So that's why I promote my Patreon, and then also t-shirts, and then also giveaways. So I'm, okay, so Daenerys, like I said, it changes her experience in Karth after she goes to the House of the Undying. So what happens in there, in short, like I said, a full chapter breakdown will be up on my Patreon. Go join. It's linked down below in the description. Patreon.com/reviews. Right? I get all of that money. I don't have to split that 60-40 with YouTube. Obviously, Patreon does take, I think it's like 17 cents every dollar or something, right? But they nowhere near as much as YouTube. So please go check out my Patreon for a full breakdown on what happens to Daenerys in the House of the Undying. And I get to curse. And I get to say whatever I want. And a lot of the times, right, my patrons won't tell you this because they don't want you to know this, but a lot of the times when I'm doing those chapter reads, I'm jacking off butt-ass naked on the toilet, showing my ding-dong. That's something you get when you join for $1. I'm lying. All right, so Daenerys in the House of the Undying, right? So basically, what makes her go into the House of the Undying, even though she's urged against it by not just Xaro Joan Daxos, right, but also her Khalasar. They're telling her, Irijiqui, they're like, these fucking purple lip guys are weird. Don't go in there. Don't do it. And then, Jorah's like, let me go with you if you want to go. Let me stand by your side if you want to go into this weirdo's house, right? So the reason why she does this is because part of what I was saying, Ed, it's like her whole experience in the city changes after this, right? She ends up burning it down, in short. But it starts to change, and that's what makes her want to go do this. She gets empty promises, and the 13 wise people are like, we don't want nothing to do with you. And the Tourmaline Brotherhood are like, you bitch, we don't want nothing to do with you. Starting to, at least, right? Right? They start to, right? She does... really everything turns against her after she burns down. So she goes into the House of the Undying. When she arrives at the House of the Undying, it's really cool. Piat Pri just sort of pops up out of nowhere, right? And then he's like, you must go alone if you want to go into here, right? And then she finally convinces her people to stay back, but Drogon goes with her. And then, and now this is interesting. This is the reason why everything that happens to her when she's in the House of the Dying. She drinks a cup of mushroom tea. Shade of the evening, but like super potent, right? So if you ever taken mushrooms and you ever listen to the description or read the description of Shade of the Evening, you're like, oh shit, George is very much a psychedelic fellow psychonaut. We'll say that, right? So, okay. Everything that she sees in the House of the Undying is thanks to this Shade of the Evening that she drinks. So she walks up to the entrance with Pyat Pri. There's the smallest dwarf she's ever seen is there. And he hands her a cup. And when she first drinks the cup, it tastes like ink and foul shit. And then she keeps drinking. And then she's like, oh my God, this is so good. This is delicious. This tastes like the sweetest sweetness I've ever tasted, right? It's very similar to when our boy Damphair is being forced to take Shade of the Evening by Euron Greyjoy in the Forsaken chapter, which is a sample chapter released for Winds of Winter, right? So Daenerys drinks Shade of the Evening. And this, according to Pyat Pri, will remove the dullness from her eyes. Not verbatim, but will just basically open her third eye. And it does, right? So he says to her as she enters, after she drinks this trippy substance, always go to the right. There's going to be other doors. You're going to hear things. You're going to see things. Always go to the right, right? So she keeps going to the right. She goes upstairs, and then she thinks, I don't ever remember there even being stairs, right? Like, she doesn't remember the House of the Undying having multiple levels, right? So she just keeps going to the right. She keeps hearing all these things. She sees she sees what's going to happen to Robb Stark in the very next book, in A Storm of Swords. She sees Robb dead, right? She sees Theon sees Robb dead as well, but in Clash of Kings, Theon is having these dreams. I'll talk about Theon here in a second, but Theon is having a feast, is at the feast with Robert when he shows up to Winterfell, and then the dream turns sour because winter creeps in, and then he realizes he's dining with the dead, and then he sees Robb Stark, who was initially alive at the beginning of the dream, push open doors, wind blows in, and Robb Stark's littered with arrows, and then his direwolf Grey Wind is littered with arrows as well. That's how they died. And then Daenerys, in the House of the Undying, sees Robb Stark dead as well. She sees him at a feast with dead people, right? Except for she sees what actually happens to him, supposedly, right? The phrase, stitch Robb's direwolf's head on his body after beheading his body and parade him around, right? They did that. They showed it for a glimpse on the TV show. So this is what Daenerys sees when she's in House of the Undying, along with many other things. She also sees Rhaegar sitting on the bed with I can't believe I just forgot her fucking name, Alaria. And he says Aegon will be his name, for his is the Song of Ice and Fire. She also sees White Walkers. When she gets to the final level of this trippy-ass house, she sees White Walkers. Initially, they all look really healthy. And, oh yeah, I meant to mention this. The Cartheens are awesome in the sense that when they make traditional, right, gowns for women, they say, remove the right part where her titty would be, covered up and sheltered. Remove that. Cut it off. Let's have one tit hanging out everywhere. So that's a traditional Carthene gown. So when she gets to the final level and she sees these healthy people that are gorgeous, right, that she's sort of tricked and lured into this, she notices that the woman has the most perfect titty she's ever seen in her whole life, right? The nipple is perfectly pointed. It's George being a horn dog. You know what I mean? But then as things start to turn sour, the nipple is withered and is blue and black, and she's looking at a dead person, right? So the Undying people start to drag her down, and they start like biting her and stuff. And then Drogon burns the whole thing down. And then after that, from the time until Daenerys leaves, when she's still in Karth, everybody hates her. The Tourmaline Brotherhood wants her to die. The 13 is the only thing Xaro's own Doxus can do to keep them from, going against Daenerys too, is like he's got her staying at his manse. But yeah, she sees White Walkers, she sees Robb Stark's death, all that cool stuff. But that's not actually what I had in my notes that I wanted to talk about specifically for this video. Okay, so Daenerys, after this, right? She ends up like deciding, okay, I need to leave, right? No one wants me here. She says, I've overstayed my welcome. Karth offers way more than it can actually give me. I want to go, right? So she goes to the traders market in Karth, and she thinks, oh, it's really cool to hear Valyrian in the common tongue. I haven't heard that in a while. And then also she thinks she's done playing with their games. She stops wearing the traditional Carthane gown by having one of her titties out, right? She stops wearing that. She dons her Dothraki riding leathers again, and she's got Jorah walking by her side. So the imagery I just wanted to mention as a side note is really cool. It's dope. This Dothraki, this silver-haired queen, right, in Dothraki riding leathers with a dragon on her shoulders, walking with the Westerosi knight over in Karth, could not be any further away from the Sunset Kingdoms. I mean, she could. There's always going further away, but it's really awesome imagery. It's why they decided to include it in the TV show for sure. And obviously, this is, like I said, where Strong Belwas and Barristan Selmy show up. Strong Belwas uses his name, but Barry doesn't. He is a really he's Barristan Selmy, so he's an old guy, but he's still like one of the most badass knights in the Seven Kingdoms. But what ends up happening is Jorah immediately notices that Strong Belwas and Barristan Selmy are following them before they introduce themselves. And Daenerys has been told that Pyat Pri and the House of the Undying, right? The Warlocks of Karth are going to try to kill her. So she's alert for the most part. So she ends up stopping at this brass booth, right? And Jorah's like, hold fast. Hold this up. Look behind you, right? Don't turn your head, but look behind us. There's people following us, right? So what Daenerys does to try to get a grip on the situation is she starts haggling this brass salesman. And he's like, 20 honors. It is less than it is worth. But she ends up talking him all the way down to like 2 honors. And it's hilarious because she tells Jorah, yo, pay this dude before he fucking dies. It's really funny. But the symbolism, right? I forgot the joke. I forgot the bit, right? The psilocybin trance last night. I forgot everything. But the main point of that is that Jorah uses the brass to smack Belwas in the head. And Belwas's head badly damages the brass. Not really symbolism, right? But Jorah betrays Daenerys. This is before she ends up kicking him from her service, and then he becomes a slave and, with Tyrion and like all that good stuff. So it made me think, Belwas hasn't done anything to betray Daenerys. One of the things that George makes very clear is that when a character becomes obsessed with prophecy or what's going to happen to them, the worst things happen to them. So with Cersei, right? She's told the younger brother, Valonqar, is going to choke the life from you, right? So her whole life, she's like, got to watch out for the younger brother. Fuck Tyrion, right? Not realizing that the prophecy is probably referring to Jaime. And then also, if she didn't think about it all the time, it wouldn't influence what she does, and she wouldn't have this self-manifestation destiny of like destroying herself, right? So Daenerys is being obsessed with this prophecy. She keeps thinking, who's going to betray me, right? So obviously Jorah does it, and Jorah loves her. At least he thinks he does. Jorah likes the idea of having to, or getting a second chance with his wife, right? So this is something that didn't happen on the TV show. Did it happen on the TV show? I don't know. But Jorah was actually married to a Hightower, right? Alicent's great ancestor, Jorah, is married to this Hightower woman. So Jorah, being from House Mormont and House Hightower, right, being who it is, big money and power difference, right? So House Mormont is a strong house from Bear Island in the north, but House Hightower is, in the book still, and then, back in the Dance of the richest house in the world. So homegirl, Jorah's wife, the Hightower girl, had a bunch of fancy tastes. So Jorah loved this woman. She's described as, Jorah says, she looks just like Daenerys. So this is why a lot of people thought House Hightower was going to look similar to the Targaryens, because House Hightower has been in Westeros for so long that it just makes sense that they were of the blood of, not Valyria, but of the blood of the ancient dragon riding people that taught the Valyrians how to ride dragons. They have those similar features, right? So anyway, and then also Jaehaerys would mistake Alicent for his daughter Sarah, who ran away across the narrow sea and started a whorehouse in Lys. So the Hightowers look like the Targaryens, right? So Daenerys looks like Jorah's ex-wife. Okay, so what happened with Jorah's wife, right? Basically, She likes fancy things. So Jorah would fight in tournaments. Jorah would do whatever he could to try to appease this woman. He would sell things. He would ride around, like I said, doing tourneys. And what would happen is he was never able to rekindle the flame that he had of how badass he was at fighting. So he would lose and he would get in further debt. And then eventually got to the point where he sold poachers. And that's why he was, exiled. But when they went across the narrow sea, this is really fucked up. He's like, I can sell my sword and still we can live. Kind of what Cole promises or offers to Rhaenyra, right? And then she ends up leaving him anyway for a merchant prince. So Jorah did all that shit, lost everything, disgraced his house, right? For this woman, this Hightower woman who looks strikingly similar to Daenerys, and he lost everything, right? So what I'm getting at here is the only thing I can think of with brass going over Belwas's head, like he smacks the brass plate that Daenerys haggles the guy down from, right? The only thing I think of is a bell, a brass bell. So it got me thinking like, oh, Daenerys is obsessed with these prophecies. It's going to be a self-manifesting destiny. George is currently telling us that with Cersei. What if Jorah is going to portray her for love, but he hasn't done it yet, right? Jorah could potentially still betray Daenerys. Like, even though he was trying to bring back Tyrion. He was trying to bring Tyrion to her and try to get back in her good favor. It's going to backfire, right? So ultimately, I think, he was scorned by his wife. What if he thinks Daenerys is going to scorn him again, and instead of allowing her to do that, he betrays her, and it's part of the reason why is he thinks he's in love with her, although she can never really see herself with him when she thinks about it. But you got to understand, she's 13 years old. So Jorah being, 30, big, hairy, burly motherfucker, she shouldn't be able to picture herself with him anyway, right? It's kind of weird, right? George is very, yeah. So a very good writer. It'll be interesting to say the least. The brass over Belwas's head. Belwas's name is Bell. This brass bell, something about that. I don't know. It's like, I'm trying to figure it out, right? And what I was going to do was actually do this stream for 8 hours, right? So we've got 63 people watching right now. Been going for 32 minutes. If we get up to 100 people consistently, this stream will go for at least 3 to 4 hours, right? So I'm going to jump in the chat. I got to finish going through my notes and then do the Patreon questions, and then I'm going to get in the chat. But I want to know, what do you all think about my summation of what something's got to happen? Like, Jorah technically was trading information to King Robert Baratheon and specifically Varys the Spider, right? To try to get a pardon back into Westeros. What if, even though Jorah stopped giving information, ultimately he still thinks he loves Daenerys. What if he says, you know what? You Hightower, like he just pictures her as the Hightower woman, and he's like, I'm not going to let this happen again. It's not going to happen again. And then also she scorned him, he kisses her, and she's like, you can't do that. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah. I don't know. I'm pretty good at this Song of Ice and Fire stuff. Oh, yeah. Check this out. $25. Go buy it. The House of the Dragon. I've explained it before. I'll explain it again real quick. The red dragon is Caraxes. The bricks behind it are the red bricks of Astapor. Brick and Blood built Astapor. Brick and Blood, its people, right? Daenerys frees the city. Dragon overcomes the slavery. It's a metaphorical thing, man. I am a very deep and spiritual person. And when I make these things and I draw these things and I paint these things, they got a lot of meaning to them. I just have a problem with communicating. So I sound very stupid sometimes. But I'm working on it, Lot of mercy. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the last thing before we jump into the Patreon questions. And this is something that I just discussed over on Patreon, but I don't know if my patrons listen to it because it's only got 4 likes and I think it's only got 10 post views. So I don't know how many patrons have seen this. So I'm going to discuss it here. Please go listen to it. Patrons, you should be the first people to listen to my things. I'm blinking SOS. What if somebody's been holding me hostage? What if George is over there? Actually, I had a joke that I was going to do. And just to show you that I'm not joking, I had this pulled up, right? So I had this on my phone. It's a picture of George, and he's saying, fuck you, right? But I had it zoomed in. So I was going to be like, as soon as I started the stream, I was going to be like, oh, George. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I'll let him know. And then just do that. That's all my porn. Y'all want to see what Sir Hunts jacks it to? Freeze frame this. That's all my porn. I like cycling through these. A lot of the times I click on the videos and then I scroll down, I start fapping and then I scroll down to the suggested videos and then I'll swipe right slightly so that the video starts playing. And then I've got 2 videos at once and it works better. It works faster. I don't have a lot of time. I am a father. I am a husband. I'm not a husband, but I have to do my duties. So 2 porn videos at once equals half the fap time. Nika Parker. Holy shit. Yep. Okay. So Theon's sons are the Miller's boys, right? Everybody who's read the chapter knows what I'm talking about. Theon is funny. Theon is a Greyjoy, minus the raping and reaving. Is probably who my personality would get along with. Like, I love Victarion's personality, right? And George has Robert informed me of this. I didn't know that. Robert from Indie Greek told me that George thinks Victarion's an idiot. But I was reading Victarion and I was like, man, this Victarion dude's fucking awesome. He's a bro. So yeah, I feel like my personality would go well with the Greyjoys. So Theon, right? He is taking over Winterfell. Obviously, he's not supposed to do that. I just stroked out. He's not supposed to do that. Where's my vape pen? Come here, you son of a bitch. Oh, it's dead. It's dead from last time. I never charge it. I never found the charger, bro. I need my vape pen. Oh, wait. Here it is. I got it to work. All right, cool. The vape pen. All right. When Theon is traveling to Winterfell, when Theon's traveling from the Iron Islands to go and reap and raid the Stony Shore, it's a distraction. It's to distract the Northmen, draw out Roderick Cassel, allow a foothold in the north for the Greyjoys. But Theon's given what he considers a bitch mission, right? So basically he thinks he should be doing what Yara on the TV show, what Asha is doing. Asha, and this is explained to Theon, but he kind of doesn't care, right? Asha, because Balon's sons were all taken from him, he learned to rely on Asha. Asha could finger dance with the best of them. What I mean by that is the guys would be wanking off the edge of the ship. Yara would go over to them. Asha would go over to them, and she would finger dance with the rest of them. The guys would be like the Greyjoys. It's one of the things they do, okay? You know how the rumor is that they summon Krakens? How do you think they summon Krakens? You think they do what Euron is doing by killing people and making... Euron actually has a ship filled with blood, and he's going to open up the blood, allow it to pour in the ocean, and draw the Kraken up. But another way that the Greyjoys get the Kraken to come out of the water is by jacking off into the ocean, and then the Kraken is attracted to all the seamen, and then it goes and devours everybody that's around after the seamen. So Yara could finger dance with the rest of them. She would go and stand on the bow, the precipice of the ship, and she would start finger dancing her clit, just like the guys. Just kidding. That whole thing was a clip for me to put on my Instagram because I'm a funny motherfucker. I'm just kidding. That was hilarious. There's at least 5 people out of the 66 watching right now. Hell, Satan! That laughed. Holy shit. No, finger dancing is like throwing axes. The Greyjoys and in specific the Iron Islanders would finger dance. They would throw axes at each other and catch them. And Yara could do it with just as good as the boys, right? So getting back on track, Balon learned to rely on Yara as if she was his son, right? So this is a patriarchal society. Women are forced into making the babies, looking the pretty, and doing women things. But Yara, remember, she could jack off on the bow of the stern of the ship just like the rest of them, but she could finger dance with the rest of them. So she is her father Balon's right-hand man, so to speak. So Theon, he's gone for 10 years with the Starks. Everything he's wearing, he paid the gold price for. He didn't actually like. So with the Iron Islands, you pay the iron price by killing someone and taking your bounty off of them. Everything that Theon's wearing when he shows up back home after 10 years of being gone, he's sent there as an envoy from Robb Stark, right? Everything he's wearing, he legitimately paid for. And his dad's like, ha, you bitch. You actually paid for that. You didn't kill the person and take it from him. So like that immediately knocks Theon down a peg or two. And he's got like this really, he thinks a lot of himself, right? So it's kind of hilarious. The many mistakes he makes because of, well, just how awesome of a person he thinks he is. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, the Miller's boys that he kills are his. So Theon breaks guest right by going back and taking Winterfell, right? So when he first takes Winterfell, Bran and Rickon are still alive, but then they run away, right? And they run away and they're gone for so long that Theon, on the hunt for them to try to find them, changes his mind and decides he's going to kill them, but he can't ever find them. Secretly, you don't find this out later, but it's because Bran and Rickon and Asha and Hodor never actually left Winterfell. They went down into the crypts and they're just chilling down there. So they sent their direwolves out to go and basically confuse the shit out of Theon. So Theon gets mad and then he comes up with the idea, thanks to Reek, to go and kill the Miller's boys, right? Who were of the same size and of the same age of Bran and Rickon. So he ends up killing them, cutting the skin off their faces. He has Ramsay do that. Ramsay's pretending to be Reek right now. Like he eventually, when Ramsay comes back with 20 good men and knocks Theon flat on his ass and breaks all of his teeth, that's when Theon's like, oh, this guy's probably not Reek, right? So he basically kills. So what do I mean by, okay, so he breaks guessed right by going back and taking over Winterfell. You're not supposed to harm anyone that's offered you bread and salt. And the Starks did that for 10 years, right? And then in the process of trying to kill the Starks, he commits kinslaying because he thinks about all the times that he slept with the Miller's wife and how he knows her body so well. He remembers the stretch marks under her titties and how good they looked and how awesome she was at fucking, right? So the whole time he's thinking about that. And then also after he does it, he suffers from dreams where he's having sex with her again and she's got teeth up above and below. So she starts biting off his neck and then her vagina bites off his dick. So it's just fun to talk about Theon and all the crazy stuff he's going through, right? So now I'm going to jump on Patreon and discuss topics and questions submitted to me by the wonderful people over there on Patreon. So let me do that real quick. Patreon.com. I know you're like, dude, you should have already had this pulled up. I know I should. I'm a bad boy. Spank me by giving me $1. Just kidding. All right. So holy shit, 29 comments. All right, so I'm gonna try to cover every single one of these that was submitted before the live stream actually started. All right, so the first one is from, oh wait, let me give a shout out to everybody who's in the chat right now. Holy shit, I didn't even think about doing that. So if you're in the chat or if you're watching and you haven't started talking, please type in the chat so I can give you a shout out. Because your name won't show up unless you're typing actively in the chat. Let's see. Trying to let the thing refresh. Pop out chat. Participants. All right, so shout out to JMJ, Kate Hartley, Laura Estrada, Littlefinger, Mixed Queen, Destiny Phillips, 420, Sir Hunt's Review, wait, that's me, Todor Christoph, Trisha Ann, and Winterfell 26. I think that's everybody that's typing in the chat right now. Anybody else that I missed that's not typing in the chat right now, sorry for that. All right, so the patrons submitted topics and questions. The first one is from Pebbles83. What's up, girl? She said, "Hi, Sir Hunts. I would love to discuss the origin of Bloodraven and your perspective on his major role in Game of Thrones / A Song of Ice and Fire. Do you think he played a key role with putting a lot of events into motion subconsciously?" And then I mentioned good one. I love Bloodraven. And then she goes on to say, me too. His origin is so interesting to me. And I also love Duncan Egg as well. I'm hoping that an adaptation is coming to HBO. Yes. So on that, to address the last part, Steve Conrad, I think, has been hired to write. And he's the guy who wrote or co-wrote or co-created Rome, which is a really good one. And that's awesome because Duncan Egg is from the perspective of the small folk. Sir Duncan the Tall is he's not even a real hedge knight. He's a squire to a hedge knight. The hedge knight, Sir Olenna Pennytree, dies, and then Sir Dunk goes, okay, I'm a knight now. And he takes up all of Sir Olenna Pennytree's ill-fitting armor, makes his way to the tourney at Ashford. But it's all of those stories are told from his perspective. And they're supposed to be, the fourth book is going to be called The She-Wolves of Winterfell. And apparently Sir Dunk is somehow related to Brienne of Tarth. And that's why Brienne of Tarth is so tall. Also Hodor, right? So Sir Dunk was slinging dick all over the Seven Kingdoms. And we're going to find that out when the rest of the Night of the Seven Kingdoms comes out. But addressing what Pebbles83 was saying about this Duncan Egg show, it's definitely coming. In my opinion, that should be, aside from Corlys and maybe the Nymeria show, and then obviously the Jon Snow show, that should be one of the first ones they push to come out because it's just there's no dragons and it's told from the perspective of someone who's not a Targaryen. Like obviously, yes, Egg will be a main character, but it's mostly the entirety of the story is told from Dunk's POV, so it's really cool. All right, so Bloodraven. Let me go back to the question because I forgot it. Do I think Bloodraven played a role with putting a lot of events into motion subconsciously? All right, so Bloodraven, if you're unaware, is a bastard known as Brynden Rivers. His father, King Aegon the Third, King Aegon the Fourth, Aegon the Unworthy, right? This big, fat, jolly dude. And I can say that. I'm not a fat person, but I could say that because George says that. George has a thing for, and I saw this as a post on Reddit, but it's just like you read the books and you can see it. You see the distinction. George loves writing about a fat, jolly king who does some terrible things, right? Enter Robert Baratheon. Enter King Aegon the Unworthy. Enter, did I say Robert Baratheon? No, I'm just kidding. Yezenzo Nutsack. Illyrio Mopatis. Like, they're not necessarily fat kings, but they're fat, voluptuous characters. And George loves writing about them. So anyway, Bloodraven's father was this dude who legitimized all of his heirs on his deathbed, right? And you may think, well, shouldn't his heirs be legitimate anyway? He was the king. Any offspring of his would automatically be princes and princesses. Well, yes, but they're all bastards. Let me clarify. He legitimized all of his bastards on his deathbed. So literally he's dying and he's like, you know what? The next king, King Daeron, all of my bastards, and he has countless. So I think he has like 90 children or something total, but not all of them are, known as the great bastards, right? But the fact that they were legitimized is just terrible. Bloodraven was one of those. So his son, the king after him, Daeron, who is a legitimate son that he has, not a bastard, although some people think that King Aegon thought he was a bastard because his sister wife cheated on him, right? And he doesn't necessarily have all of the Targaryen good looks. But anyway, the next king after him tried to keep the peace by retaining the titles and the allowances and paying the salary of all of these great bastards. But ultimately, Bloodraven ends up becoming, we'll say, master of whispers, kind of, right? Like he's hand of the king, but ultimately, Bloodraven is half blood of the first man. His mother was I wanted to say Barbary Bracken, but that's not his mother. He's a Blackwood. His mother was Melissa Blackwood, if I'm not mistaken. And then the King Egg from Duncan Egg, who I was just talking about, he marries a Blackwood as well. Is his mother Betha Blackwood or Melissa? I think Betha, because Betha had the land taken from Barbara. Barbara's teats was taken and given to the Backwoods on behalf of Betha. And then also one of the ships, one of the war galleys in Clash of Kings is named Lady Betha or Betha. Fuck, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But anyway, I've said this and people don't like it when I say this. I don't know why. But when you have blood of ice and fire, it's really special. Jon Snow, blood of ice and fire. His mother, blood of the first man. His father, blood of the dragon. So he's literally ice and fire. But you could argue that Daenerys is also half, well, not half, but just has, ice blood as well. She's got firstman blood in her through the marriages that I was just talking about. So Aegon marries a Blackwood as well. Aegon the Unlikely. And it's said, or it's not said, but he's called Aegon the Unlikely when he becomes king. The kid from Duncan Egg, he's called Aegon the Unlikely because he's the second son of a second son. He's like 8 times removed from the line of succession, but he somehow sits the throne. So getting way back on track here, Bloodraven has these mystical abilities because he is blood of the dragon and blood of the old gods, blood of the first men. And first men in particular have the ability to green see, right? And then Targaryens have the ability, or Valyrians have the ability to have premonitions through dragon dreams. And I guarantee you that when Valyria was at the height of its power, they had way more control over their power than the old gods and their green seers, just because it's mentioned specifically that Valyria would allow, not necessarily as much as a shy, but they would allow those, those types of corruptible magics that weren't allowed everywhere else. So they were able to greater learn. They caused greater destruction and they caused pain on themselves in the process of learning about this information. But ultimately, getting back on track here, Bloodraven has the abilities of ice and fire. So he's got, the ability to work into any. Bloodraven right now is teaching Breanne how to become the next Green Seer. We're kind of just talking about the old gods and how Breanne is working for them. And he's like the old god, Bloodraven, who's, what's interesting is that Bloodraven may not actually be the old god of death. Maybe that's what Breanne is going to be. Maybe Bloodraven's for sure a servant of his. But, I need some more time to think about these theories. And really, they come to me when reading World of Ice and Fire about the most random, unrelated part. I'll be able to come back to this. But ultimately, I would love to see, like Pebbles was saying, I would love to see the Duncan Egg TV show. I want to know more about him. I'm really excited to see who they cast to play him. There is a distinction in between his abilities and someone like Breanne, right? Like Breanne has this connection to the old gods. He's becoming, he will eventually become the three-eyed raven or the three-eyed crow, Bloodraven, right? But there's a distinction and something happens to him. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, that I want to see in this new show because he's able to live for as long as he has. And like, he's not like, as old as he was in the TV show where they said he was thousands of years old, but he is older than anybody else. There's no one else that was alive that's his age from that time period, except for Walder Frey. And Walder Frey was like 6 years old. So there's something more to Bloodraven. Let me make sure I actually answered your question. Do I think he played a role in a lot of the events into putting into motion subconsciously? So a lot of people have theorized that. I was just talking about how Breanne can travel back and forth through time. He opens Jon's eye. He talks to Arya when she's at Harrenhal praying to the old gods from the future. So it's very much possible that Bloodraven has influenced a bunch of events. If not Bloodraven, then Brann, right? Because the original, like Brandon Stark himself is named after Ned's brother, Brandon, right? Who was killed by the Mad King when Rhaegar stole Lyanna, and Brandon went with his father Rickard down south. Obviously, Ned didn't go with him, but Brandon and Rickard did. And then Rickard was choked to death trying to grab his sword while his father was being burned to death, right? So he was named after this dude, Brann the Builder. Anybody in House Stark, for the most part, unless they're named after a direct relative who's named after Brann, is named after this one crazy figure from their... He's from the Age of Heroes, right? But he supposedly built the wall. He supposedly gave Durin's Defiance. He supposedly gave instruction on how Storm's End was built. All these other structures are accredited to him. But what's interesting is that his name is Brann, and that he's seemingly wise beyond his years, and then he's also crippled, or at least depictions of him have shown him crippled. And who is that to? Like, who does that directly relate to? Brann of this day. Brann is wise beyond his years. And it kind of shows you that George doesn't ever have any kids, or he's never had kids. Because some of the things that he has them think of, it's like just beyond. There's like no way. Like, I've only been a dad for coming up on 2 years this month, but I've learned so much about children in that 2 years that you can kind of tell people who don't have them or who write about them. Like, whatever, that's besides the point. Brann could potentially be the one that you're talking about, influencing all these events subconsciously, when we find out in the story that he can already do that. He's kind of traveling from the future to the past to direct Jon Snow to do certain things, to direct Arya to do certain things, and they're going to probably eventually become his servants if he fulfills his destiny in becoming one of the old gods. So I was saying before, George has said this through Maester Crescent, not Crescent, more so when Brann is having his lessons, right? So when Brann and I'm trying to think, is it before or after the Reeds get there? I don't even know. But the idea of a god dying, right, is real, because Maester Luwin tells Brann, like, look, at one point, gods were around. Do we know about the time period in that magic? Not necessarily, but one thing's for certain is that it doesn't exist now in the form that it once did, right? That's what Maester Luwin tells Brann. So George says these things and repeats them in his stories, and you're not supposed to be like, oh, that's a theory. No, that's what it is. That's what's happening right now. So Daenerys is bringing back the fire god. Brann is bringing back the ice god, who may potentially be the god of death, which also you got to realize ice preserves, fire destroys. So maybe R'hllor is the god of death, and the old god, the ice god, the god of death that I'm saying Brann is working for, may potentially be the god of life, because he's trying to preserve everything. So to keep men from destroying it, right? So George is a hippie, and that's why he wrote, there's nothing wrong with that. I myself am a hippie. Talk to me last night. But yeah, no. The whole story is like, everything was good until the First Men started cutting down the trees of the Children of the Forest. That's when they got disrespected, had to call the Pact of Ice, and all these things started happening when the First Men disrespected the Children of the Forest and cut down their sacred weirwood trees to build forts and castles, and like the Weirwood Throne in the Eyrie, and then also Naga's Bones in the Iron Islands is a giant weirwood ship. The First Men were doing all these things with the weirwood trees, pissed off the nature gods, and then they warred with the First Men. The First Men killed the nature gods, the old gods, the forgotten many named gods of the North, right? And now they're coming back through the form of Brann. Daenerys is bringing back the fire god that was destroyed at the Doom of Valyria through the form of her dragons, right? You got Euron bringing back the sea god and all of his seamen, and the Greyjoys jacking off into the ocean, summoning krakens, right? Yarick finger dancing with the best. They're bringing back the storm god, right? And then, so on and so forth. Hopefully I answered your question, Pebbles83. We've got like 30 more of these to get through. All right. So this one is from a newer subscriber of mine, and his username is Daryl Platukis. Thanks for your support, man. And he left a bunch of comments, but I think to summarize what he was saying is like, it's a what if question. What if Viserys made Daemon his heir, and how would that affect the story? right? So this is a House of the Dragon question. So we're jumping into House of the Dragon. Well, for one thing, it would save a bunch of heartache, but also create a bunch of heartache because Daemon is very much a rogue prince, right? So yes, it would have made Daemon not hold out at Dragonstone and say, I'm going to marry my Arya and this is a dragon egg and she's pregnant, or I'm going to take your daughter, or just do the things that he did initially at first. It would have subsided that stuff. But then as things progress, Viserys would read the writing on the wall. His counsel influences him more than anyone else. So ultimately what would happen is the same thing. His counselors would have been like, you have a daughter, okay? You've got sons. You need to remove Daemon as your heir because he's unpredictable. He is a dragon, and you want times of peace. Jaehaerys, you gotta continue that, right? You want to have the land, all 7 kingdoms prosperous. You want to make sure that there's no outright insane wars that are killing innocents and all this stuff. If you want to keep that going, Daemon will have to be removed as your heir. So to answer your question, right, what if Daemon was proposed as heir and like, would that stop all? No, I think it would eventually happen. What it would do is just prolong that from actually happening. Thank you for submitting that, Daryl. And then this one's from Heart of Inspiration, who said she had to miss the live stream. She has to work, but hopefully she can, let's see, I'm going to timestamp it for 1 hour and 1 minute. If you are able to watch this, this is when I answered. She said, not sure if this is the topic for the live, but I've been hearing all sorts of rumors about Snow, Jon Snow. The latest is that he'll be the new Night King, which I find preposterous. What are the latest and most plausible possibilities you're hearing? Do you think do I think that Snow may be loosely based on possible endings to the story that George R. Martin has planned? For sure. I think that's the only thing that makes sense, right? So I don't know Kit Harington's writing skills, but I know his reading skills are amazing because he's an actor. He has to read the script. So he's probably read the books, right? And that's what made me initially, when I first heard about the Snow Show, was like, oh my God, they're going to do all the plot lines that they left out from the main series. And it would just make the most sense, right? Jon's already going back north of the wall. Bring in some of those wildlings that were cut from the show, like Val, potential love interest, right? Also, White Walkers are not dead. I don't think Jon Snow would become the new Night King. I think I've just done a video on this a couple of days ago. If you missed it, it's linked down below in the description. Anybody watching this, also Heart of Inspiration. That summarizes all my best ideas for it, but it just makes sense. Jon's going back north of the wall. If you want to bring back the White Walker plot, well, then it just makes sense. They're not dead. They died too easily. Maybe they can't ever really truly go away, and it's about subsiding and keeping them happy. So, the only reason why they would come back is because Jon took those people back north of the wall, and the White Walkers were like, okay, we're fine. All of the wildlings, all the people that disrespect our culture, because remember, they were created by the Children of the Forest, all the people that we don't like are gone, so we'll be happy up here, and we'll not make wars. Will not make wars on the kingdoms of men as long as they stay on their side of the wall. But that's not the case. Jon took them back north of the wall. So maybe he unintentionally is walking all of those free folk into a slaughter. Jon will barely survive with the band of wildlings. He'll get the Castle Black. And guess what? New Lord Commander doesn't let Jon Snow south. You guys are fucking wildlings. And guess what? Jon Snow can't die. He's a fire white. So there's so many things that you could do without turning Jon into the Night King. That's corny. Although you got to realize the Night's King in A Song of Ice and Fire and how his story is so much more poetic than what happens with Jon Snow and the Night King on the TV show. Because first of all, the Night's King in the books is a character. And people always go, the Night King doesn't even exist. But no, he does. Just not to the point of how he was on the TV show, like an actual person confirmed. Anybody who's ran into him potentially died. Benjen could potentially have ran into him and is turned into a White Walker, and that's why you haven't seen Benjen yet, right? So George has already said he's not cold hands, but it's just silly to say the Night King is not in the books. It's not quite that simple. The Night's King, the 13th Lord Commander, is in the books, and he's this dude that fell in love with this blue-eyed woman from north of the wall. She tricks him. He ends up sacrificing to her gods. The two of them go to the Night Fort, and he rules for a couple of years doing evil shit, right? That's the origins of the Night King, right? Is this 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. You got to realize there's 1,000 Lord Commanders before they even get to Jon being the 998th Lord Commander, right? Because when Sam is in the catacombs beneath Castle Black, he's reading all these books, and he's like, holy shit, dude. The Night's Watch has been around a lot longer than we think. The Night's Watch has been trading with the wildlings a lot longer than we think. Lord Commander, Jon Snow, you're not even close to being the youngest. There's actually 7 other Lord Commanders who are just as young as you are. So Sam is discovering all this information, and he finds out that, it just, in my opinion, in short, to answer your question, Heart of Inspiration, Jon becoming the Night King in the books is not as corny as it is, or how it would be perceived on the TV show. And it's because George has built up all this lore around it, and it's mysterious, and he sort of explains it, but then he'll ultimately explain a similar situation in another part of his story, and you kind of got to go back and draw conclusions from that. And it's like, that's the safest thing to do, because I know there's some crazy tinfoil theories out there. I'm responsible for some of them. My favorite tinfoil theory that I came up with was Robert Strong is actually called Robert Strong because he's got Ned's head on his body, or I'm sorry, Robert's head on his body or some shit. In the skull that I don't know, it was silly. It was so stupid. It was tinfoil, and I hadn't even read the books, and I was just like making it up. But ultimately, that's, in my opinion, what I've learned is you will get answers to the biggest mysteries in George's story by just going back and reading about similar situations he's written about in the context of A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm not saying go back and read The Ice Dragon or go back and read some of the books that he was writing in the 70s or 80s. No, I just mean in the context of A Song of Ice and Fire. So this is my favorite part. Y'all ready? I do this every stream. A Game of Thrones, A Clash of Kings, A Storm of Swords, A Feast for Crows, Dance with Dragons, World of Ice and Fire, Your Mother. Just kidding. Rogue Prince, Rogue Princess, Fire and Blood Part 1, Rise of the Dragon, all that good stuff, right? So in the context of those books, you can find every major character has a similar counterpart, and you can see how George ended their journey, because it's usually from a history perspective, right? Ultimately, you can draw from those to figure out how things happen. So I think the new show they'll have to bring back the White Walker plot. Will Jon become the Night King? Who knows? You got to realize the culture of the White Walkers and really the others is so awesome, because they're not like zombies, right? They're literal ice beings. Their armor shimmers like the wall itself. So like there's one point in Jon's POV in Clash of Kings, I think it's Jon 3, he looks up and he sees, oh shit, the wall looks like a mirror. It's like shifting. All these different colors, lights are hitting it, and it looks amazing, right? But then on gloomy days, it looks like crap. It's this, it looks like regular ice, right? But this is how the White Walkers are described. And then also their voice sounds like crackling ice and icicles and stuff like that. I know that sounds corny, but Children of the Forest, when they talk, it sounds like pebbles skipping across a lake, and it sounds like leaves blowing in the wind and crunching up under your feet when you're walking. So that's really interesting. George is all about the fantasy stuff in his books, but it's juxtaposed by so much medieval realism that you're like, oh, there's no fantasy in these books. But no, there really is. The White Walkers, the others, are probably just a group of people like the free folk that were misunderstood. They don't look like everybody else. They need to live in a certain environment, and they were forced to have smaller and smaller homeland. So this is the lands of always winter got pushed further and further back. And then eventually they started war against humankind because they're tired of their shit. Ice dragons are probably part of the others. You got to realize Starks, it's always said, Starks have blood of the wolf. So the way that the Children of the Forest would pass gifts on to the Starks is they would mix with him. They would breed with him, right? They would give their gifts on to him that way. But also the Children of the Forest, the Children of the Forest themselves are part beast. So they could initially probably mate with wolves. So there was probably some child of the forest doggy style with a giant dire wolf the pups come out. The pups are really hairy. They still look like children of the forest. And then those offspring sleep with the stocks, sleep with the first men, and that gets spread all around. So the others whose culture we haven't really learned about is probably something similar to that. They found some primordial dragons. They were like, these dragons are pretty sexy. Let's stick all ice wieners up their cunnies. Let's do this, right? Let's make ice dragons. McDonald's sweet tea, man. This is off of coffee. Usually I'm off of coffee. I feel like I'm more focused off of the McDonald's sweet tea, which there's a fucking surcharge for. What the fuck? A surcharge for getting, you know why? It's because it's unlimited refills. And this cup is actually from 5 days ago. The women who work the drafter don't give a shit. They see me pull up every day. I was like, yeah, I was in there earlier. Also McDonald's are everywhere. So you just go to a different one. I think that's why they did the surcharge for it. All right. So thank you for submitting that Heart of Inspiration. Hopefully I answered that to the best. I answered it to the best of my ability. Hopefully that is factory. All right. And then we got one from the North Must Remember. He's in the chat right now. Make sure y'all go subscribe to his channel. He mentions, question, if Cersei, I can't pronounce that because you spelled it wrong. I'm just kidding. If Cersei is sitting on the Iron Throne during the upcoming long night, considering Aegon's song, does that lend any credibility to the theory that Cersei and Jaime is the Mad King? All right, so I've kind of answered this before, right? In particular, and I know you've probably seen this, bro, because you watch all my shit, right? You've seen all my live streams, you've seen all my videos, but if you missed it, it's from I think it's over a year ago. I did a 45-minute stream on Cersei. Since I only had one topic, I didn't have any questions or anything to talk about. I just did a live stream full out on Cersei. Go watch that because that is where you'll get the best of what I'm about to say here, right? So when you read Cersei's POV, she's insane. She's really fun to read because you're like, at least for me, right? I was just talking about Daenerys being obsessed with prophecy and Cersei being obsessed with prophecy to the point where it rules her whole existence, and she creates this self-manifestation of gonna destroy herself and everything around her because she's trying to avoid this one thing that honestly probably never would have happened if she wasn't so focused on it, right? When you learn all about that and you see okay, she's psychotic, and then you hear about how the Mad King would be laughing hysterically one moment, but then a second later he would start weeping tears. It sounds really funny, but it's sad. So that mental illness was likely passed on to whoever his kin are, right? At least some form of it. Now, is Daenerys suffering from this? Potentially. Do I know how mental disorders and mental health, and am I potentially bipolar myself in real life? Probably. But do I know how that works in Westeros? No, I don't. So it's impossible to sort of justify my opinion that Cersei and Jaime would be the Mad King's daughter through mental illness alone from that aspect. Because it's impossible to verify. We don't know if you could pass it on in real life, or you could pass on certain genetic markers that if one parent and the other parent has it, the child is more likely to have it because they carried a passive version of. I don't know about all that stuff, and I don't really know about any of that stuff in real life. So the most concrete proof we would have that Cersei and Jaime are the Mad Kings, and your question was if now that we know Aegon's song, that's more so for the TV show. They're trying to connect Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and then the new Jon Snow show, and then also the potential Aegon show that's coming out before the books. It's mentioned in World of Ice and Fire that a lot of people think that one day Aegon just decided to conquer Westeros, but that's not the case. Point Exhibit A, the painted table. It was made 12 years before he ever decided to go and conquer Westeros. He wanted to have what it looked like for a while. So it's potential that Aegon's song is a thing in the books, but that's probably something that George will never confirm because that's not really his style. Daenerys could come across a scroll. There could be a maester that has records of it, but what the TV show did where Sam found records of Jon Snow's marriage to Rhaegar and it didn't really mean anything, that's probably not going to happen in the books. That's something that Dan and Dave included in the show because everybody kept saying they veered off of the books. They wanted to include certain random details from the books, but it ultimately didn't amount to anything in the initial iteration of the Game of Thrones show. Probably not the case in the new Jon Snow, but just getting way back on track here. The only way to for sure say concrete evidence is that the Mad King himself had a thing for Joanna Lannister, who is the cousin of Tywin, also Tywin's wife, right? And because of that, he could use, his power of the Lord's right, or literally just being king of the Seven Kingdoms, and take Joanna at his will. There's a bunch of things that happened between Tywin and the Mad King that you only hear about from other people's perspectives, some of which, like Tyrion or Cersei or I guess Barristan Selmy or the Maesters from the World of Ice and Fire. They weren't even either around during that time. They didn't know the person. It's kind of very similar to House of the Dragon and Fire and Blood, like Sheep Stealer and Nettles. Nettles is described as a brown girl and a brown dragon, but the dude who wrote that describing Nettles never saw her in his fucking life, so you don't really know what Nettles look like, right? Kind of thing. So that's similar to this. The way Cersei reacts to wildfire, in my opinion, is the most concrete evidence that the Mad King took his way with Joanna Lannister, Cersei and Jaime's parents, and Cersei and Jaime's mom. And also Cersei and Jaime were born before Tyrion. A lot of people like to say Tyrion's a Targaryen because of his affinity with dragons. He's got mismatched colored eyes. He's also got hair that's described very similar to the Targaryens. And then also he has one black streak. It's not really a black streak. It's hard to, I don't remember verbatim, but I do know what people are talking about when you see depictions of Tyrion drawn with Lannister yellow hair, but then also white, silver. And then you'll see a black streak or something. I think it's more like his roots, parts of his roots in one section of his hair are darker than the other parts. And when you look at Tyrion's mismatched eyes, not the green one, but the black one, when you look at that in certain lights, it's so dark, it could actually be purple, right? So this is why people say Tyrion is a Targaryen. And then you go, okay, well, if Tyrion is a Targaryen, well, then Jaime and Cersei are supposed to be Targaryen. You read Cersei's POV and you're like, oh, wildfire, or just whatever else, this is, maybe the Mad King's kids are, the Mad King's kid is sitting there on the throne right now through Cersei, which is kind of relating to your question. It's like, we need more for that. It's like the Longclaw being Dark Sister thing. I need more for that for the TV show. I don't want to say 100% that Cersei's the Mad King's daughter like I will with Rhaegar and Lyanna being Jon Snow's daughter. The reason why I could say that is because it's so blaringly obvious in the A Song of Ice and Fire books that Jon Snow's parents are Rhaegar and Lyanna. Ned thinks about it all the time. Promise me, Ned. Ned refuses to talk about who Jon Snow's parents are to Catelyn, this woman that he loves. Ned is known as never betraying his honor or going against his word, so why would he do it to Catelyn? Yes, he was in love with a Chardane potentially, but why would he, after already being married to Catelyn, break his vows and go and father a bastard? He wouldn't. He wouldn't do that. If he did, he wouldn't. He's too honorable of a person to bring that bastard back into his household and treat Jon as well as he did. It just makes sense. Jon Snow is his nephew. He's doing his sister's dying. Speaking of sisters, and not dying, but my sister's birthday is today. I know she's not watching this. She didn't even watch Game of Thrones, but happy birthday, Shanae, my sister. There's a picture from my Instagram. I didn't tag her in it or anything, but happy birthday to my sister. If you want to send me a super chat for $100, I'll send it to my sister. I'll make sure she gets it. Tyrion and Cersei. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, happy birthday to my sister. I swear to God, I'm not doing this on purpose. Who and what was I just talking about? Oh, yes. Ned. It just makes the most sense. He's keeping his dying sister's secret. And anytime Catelyn brings it up, she gets chewed out. He treats them as well as he treats his own kids because Jon didn't do anything wrong. Ned when you read his POV in Game of Thrones, obviously it doesn't exist after that because he's missing a head. But when you read his POV in Game of Thrones, he never thinks back and goes, God, Jon Snow's mother had some moist vagina. He never thinks back on that. He never thinks about how painful it is to look at Catelyn and think about the night that he slept with Jon Snow's mother. That guilt doesn't exist in his POV. And guilt and thinking back and cornerstones to characters are prevalent in all of the other POVs. So the fact that Ned doesn't think about cheating on Catelyn and doesn't think about hurting her and all that shit, he never did. He never did. He might have been married to a Dane. And what made a Dane jump off the damn tower and kill herself is, well, she was pushed. No, I'm just kidding. He probably told her, look, I love you, but I am married to Catelyn, and I already have Robb Stark with her, so I'm going to keep doing that. I'm sorry. And also, I killed your brother. Like, yeah, he killed, like, I'm not saying Ned killed friggin' Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the friggin' Morning. But what I am saying is that Ned and friggin' Howland Reed killed Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the friggin' Morning. Ned is in love with his sister. Ned takes the sword back to Starfall, gives it to Ashara, and says to her, your brother's dead. I love you. I can't be with you. I've got to go take care of my children. Also, my sister's bastard. Sorry. Of course, she would be, grief-stricken because she probably then told Ned, I have your baby. We fell in love and were married before he got married at the tourney in Harrenhal. Ashara Dayne, who's loved by Barristan Selmy. Barristan Selmy is the one who says whatever Ned Stark did to Ashara, he defamed her or whatever. So they probably slept together that night. She got pregnant, told him about that when he's bringing back, Arthur Dayne's sword. Ned's saying, hey, your brother's dead. Also, I love you. Also, I can't be with you, right? Also, she probably said, well, I have a child. We have a child together. I'm pregnant, right? And then she jumps to her death because he still chooses to go away. Going back to my main point as to why he's never cheated on Catelyn, right? He slept with Ashara, but that was before he got married. That was before Catelyn was betrothed to Brandon. So Brandon, his brother. So why would he be worried about whatever the fuck Catelyn thinks of him? He's the second son. He's going to be, speaking of second sons, Ned is the best second son of all of the second sons. Daemon, Aemon, second sons, right? Anyway, so yeah, it just makes sense. Like, I never was like, oh, Jon Snow's parents are actually Ned and such and such. If anything, I entertained the idea that Ned was in love with Lyanna. And Lyanna and Ned are Jon Snow's parents. But Lyanna's always going to be Jon Snow's mom. Pool of Blood, Tower of Joy, Rhaegar being a Targaryen. You hear about Targaryens being able to, like, woo the crap out of women. He can play. Rhaegar in particular could play the harp so beautifully that bitches would weep. Like, I can play the guitar pretty good. No, I can't. People on YouTube tell me I can play the guitar pretty good. I can play the guitar respectably. Very, very shitty for someone who's been playing since the age of 16 like I have been. But to be fair, every time I get a nice electric guitar, I have to pawn it because it's just too, like, I'll have a $600 or something guitar laying around. I'm like, man, how much mushrooms I could buy with that? I'm just kidding. But literally, right? I usually have to trade it for bills because, I've never once been like, if I learn this song really well, my goal is to make a woman cry. My goal is to make whoever listens to this cry. I've never achieved that level of music. So Rhaegar was that good. He probably, you got to realize Lyanna is not your average woman neither. She was like wearing armor and she unhorsed and defeated a bunch of dudes at tourneys because she's a northern, from Northern society, right? She's blood of the first man that we were talking before, but in Northern society, some women, Sansa, obviously not, but some women are like Arya and their father, like especially the women of Mormont, of House Mormont and Bear Island, Mage and Lyanna and Maggie, I'm just kidding. Daisy Mormont, they're all badass. Like she's a commander in Robb's army. She's so badass with an axe, right? So the northern women, Lyanna in particular, she could ride a horse really well. She could easily defeat these dudes whose only experience was like wearing armor and maybe going hunting. She was just better matched against her foes. Rhaegar was tasked at the Tourney Heron Hall of finding out who this mystery Knight of the Laughing Tree is. He goes and finds her. He goes and finds the Knight of the Laughing Tree, figures out it's Lyanna, and then falls in love with her. And he's like, you know what? We're supposed to get married and have babies together. Probably what happens is he finds her, right? And I'm being dead serious. All joking aside. Rhaegar at the Tourney Heron Hall finds Lyanna, and he's like, I was not expecting this, right? And she's like, well, neither was I. And then they probably tussle, they rustle around, they sleep with each other, right? Then they go to sleep, and Rhaegar gets a vision, gets a dragon dream. This is why Rhaegar was much more melancholic than everybody else around him. He literally never wanted to sword fight or do tourneys or anything. He's like, Aemon, I don't give a shit about tourneys, right? He never wanted to do any of that until one day he read a passage in a book that was like, hey, Rhaegar, you're supposed to be a good warrior. Then he decided, I'm going to pick up a sword and learn how to fight, right? So that's the type of dude this guy Rhaegar is, right? So it just makes sense. He gets dragon dreams, right? Just like Helena on the TV show, just like Viserys did at one point on the TV show, just like Aegon did, right? Just like Dany's the Dreamer, going all the way back to 12 years before the doom of Valyria, right? What am I talking about? Just makes sense. Rhaegar had the vision. And then, Robert's Rebellion happens. Okay, so moving on to the next topic. Wait. Damn, man, I went crazy off tangent. I was answering the North Must Remember's question about Cersei on the Iron Throne. So yeah, hopefully that answered that. Like I said, go watch the live stream, my dude, because in that 45-minute live stream, I haven't done that many live streams before House of the Dragon. Like obviously I've been doing every week, but before that, it's really easy to find. It's like 45 minutes, picture Cersei. I think it's, you know what? Let me drop the link in the chat. I'm going to do it right now. Let's see, Cersei. Right here. It's called She Who Played with Lions. Talk about Cersei potentially being a warg, being a cat warg, because the Lannisters probably have the ability to warg cats or something, maybe, potentially. There, the link is in the chat. All right, so getting back on track here. Thank you for submitting that, by the way, Northwest Remember. The next one is from I'm trying to see which order they were submitted in. There's quite a few. Trisha Ann. Trisha Ann, thank you for your support. And you mentioned, okay, so feel free to skip this if you want, because this is kind of silly. All right, well, then I'll skip it. I'm just kidding. But I just realized that Robb Stark is named after Robert Baratheon, right? Yes. Robb, it's funny, Stannis is a salty dude, right? But there does have some truth to it. Robert considered Ned more of a brother than he did to Renly. Well, I mean, he's kind of considered Renly a brother because he gave Renly Storms in, but ultimately, Robert and Ned were closer than Robert ever was close with how close he was with his brothers. So Ned named his son Robb after King Robert, and he's actually called Robb because his full name is Robert, and the king is called Robert, so it's just shortened to Robb. Just like Ned is shortened from Eddard. Eddard is named. Who the fuck is Ned named after? I don't know, but Robb Stark potentially will name. Robb Stark is dead, but his son is little baby Ned. But also, you got to realize that Jane Westerling likely was drinking moon tea every day, so she doesn't actually have little baby Ned in her belly. But continuing on, you say, also, I saw this clip again from season. Wait, this isn't the question. This is the question. Okay. Did Bloodraven, the last known owner of Dark Sister, thank you for submitting this, Trisha Ann, on my Patreon. Speaking of which, if you're watching this right now, please go join it or consider joining it, right? You can join for as little as $1. That tier's back open, but you immediately will get access to 21 episodes of an exclusive podcast called Leaks and Lore. And if you like these live streams and you like my personality, like I'm No, I am trying to hype it up because that's what, it allows me to no longer rely on YouTube as my main source of ad revenue, but, or just revenue in general, because YouTube is obviously unpredictable with how well a video is going to do. No matter how much time and energy I put into it, it's unpredictable. Depends on how the algorithm wants to take the video. But over on Patreon, when I'm talking about chapter breakdowns, I'm usually only talking about the one thing, so I'm more focused. I feel like I get to be myself more, so I get to, use more colorful language, but also show my personality more, which I think what makes people attracted to want to watch me talk about shit they like. So please consider going to go join that. But Trisha Ann says, did Bloodraven, the last known owner of Dark Sister, give Dark Sister to the Mormonts while knowing it would eventually be given to Jon, the Dark, disguised as Longclaw? Or is Longclaw a separate, similar sword, and Bloodraven still has Dark Sister beyond the... So in short... did Bloodraven give Dark Sister to the Mormonts to knowing that eventually it is a possibility for that? Now, I've actually mentioned since House of the Dragon came out, I've mentioned it as a passing theory and part of a video, but I've said this even in this live stream, I need more evidence for the TV show. That theory makes sense, right? So Bloodraven, when he is ultimately exiled from the kingdom. So what happens is okay. Is it Bittersteel? No, it's not Bittersteel. Basically, Bloodraven breaks the word of the Iron Throne. So someone is promised safety and they're allowed to it's Blackfire. Which one? Daemon Blackfire? Is it Daemon Blackfire the second? I need to reread A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, obviously. But, no, actually, that's a part in World of Ice and Fire, because we haven't even gotten that far in Night of the Seven Kingdoms yet, because there's only been 3 books that come out. So, in World of Ice and Fire, under the reign of, during the time period of the Blackfire Rebellions. But ultimately, I think it's Daemon Blackfire is promised safety in the Red Keep, and Bloodraven, being handed the king, kills him, right? So, and the reason why is because the last time a Blackfire was promised fealty, they got sent to the wall, and then halfway to the wall, their ship was captured, and then the Bittersteel was able to escape back over across the narrow sea. So Bloodraven didn't want that to happen again with Daemon Blackfire. He wanted to put an end to the Blackfire Rebellions, and he killed him. So what King Aegon did, Aegon the Unlikely, the kid from Dunk and Egg, when he becomes king, he says, Bloodraven, get the fuck out, right? So Bloodraven willingly goes to the wall, and this is really interesting, right? So talking more about Pebble's 83 question for Bloodraven, and also talking about the Longclaw thing for the Northwest. Remember, I'm just giving shout outs. But anyway, he does. Bloodraven takes his finest archers with him, and they're known as the Raven's Teeth, and they use weirwood bows, and also because they're known to be the best archers in Westeros, and there's rumors of a Brandon Stark carving weirwood arrows and saying to his brother Torrhen Stark, the one who knelt, that he could take out one of Aegon's dragons if he wanted him to with that weirwood arrow. The idea that the Raven's Teeth, in my opinion, they're all wargs, right? They can all, control animals in maybe not necessarily control an animal, but warg into the arrow of their weirwood bows that they shoot when they loose, knock, and draw, when they're being an archer, and they can control slightly the direction of them. And that's why he took them with him north of the wall. But ultimately, Bloodraven was probably given a vision, right? He takes Dark Sister with him to the Night's Watch. He rises to Lord Commander, and then he disappears on an expedition a few years after he becomes Lord Commander. And then we find out, he's this 3-eyed raven fellow who's calling towards Breanne in his dreams, and he wants Breanne to come up north. Ultimately, some people think it's because he wants to basically possess Breanne and use his body, right? So, do I think that the sword that Bloodraven takes with him, Dark Sister, was given to House Mormont? Well, it's supposedly in Bloodraven's cave right now. And when Game of Thrones came out, and it was in its fifth season, and Mira and Brandy. Remember, Brandy was gone for the entirety of the season, so it's hard for me to remember the exacts of it. When Mira is running out of the cage, she grabs a sword, and people were like, "Oh shit, is that Dark Sister?" It didn't turn out to be, but they did retcon a few things for House of the Dragon, soft retcons, right? They changed the way the Iron Throne looks, but ultimately they changed the color of Drogon's skull. I'm sorry, not Drogon, Balerion's skull. So that is another soft right. So maybe, potentially, when we do get a Blackfire Rebellion, to answer your question, Trisha, it is possible that Dark Sister is given to for the books, like, we don't really have a POV of someone who's using Dark Sister as a weapon to know what it looks like, right? We just know that Longclaw is this bastard sword. It's known as like a hand and a half sword or whatever. It's in between a great sword and in between a short sword. So it's perfect for Jon. It's funny, Jon is so little when he first gets it that he has to actually sling it on his back because he's too short and it drags on the ground when he walks. So, Dark Sister, what we know about it is that is potentially is a slender blade that may have potentially be made for a female initially because Visenya, Aegon's sister wife, the warrior one. It's interesting. George says that Visenya's the warrior one, but really she's more into dark arts. She had used dark arts to make Maegor the Cruel and then used dark arts again to heal Maegor the Cruel, and all of his brides were dark arts. So really, Rhaenys, his other wife, was just a poet-loving music person, and people say she dabbled more in the spells because she liked soothsayers or whatever and wizards and all that stuff, and then her son Aenys liked that stuff as well. But really, Visenya was more of the sorcerer warrior queen. Visenya was definitely the warrior queen because she literally created the Kingsguard. She told Aegon, these dudes around you ain't shit, right? So I'm just I'm explaining the scenario, not verbatim, but in a funny way, right? So they're walking through the streets, and she ends up besting she tells Aegon, you need guards. And he's like, I have guards. And she's like, no, you need a king's guard. You need a specific division or a force of dudes that are the greatest knight in the land to protect you. And he's like, whatever. So she ends up carving through, not killing them, but she just cuts through the best of them and nearly draws blood on Aegon before, she's ultimately, but she has Dark Sister. So the idea is that Dark Sister may have initially been made for her hand. So it's more of a slender blade. It's got rubies in the hilt, and there's like an official description of it in Ice and Fire and stuff, but it's not there's not enough context there for me to be like, it's Darkclaw's long sister. There is enough context for me to be like, Ned Stark never cheated on his wife. He never thinks about cheating, like feeling remorseful for it. Rhaegar and Lyanna are Jon Snow's parents. All right. So let's see. Was that the last part of that question from Trisha Ann? Yes. Okay. So then, technically, Destiny, you submitted these late as a motherfucker, but I'm gonna answer them. All right. I'm just giving you a hard time. All right. So Destiny, Mixed Queen Destiny Phillips 420 says, so is Jon a fire wraith, the undead? And if Dany is brought back, does that mean she will be one as well? Well, if Daenerys is brought back in the light of R'hllor, yes, she's a fire white. George has said in interviews when Jon Snow was first, so this is season 2, yes, Jon Snow dies and brought back in season 2. In season 6, when Jon Snow was brought back, George was doing all these interviews. When I first started making videos here on YouTube, he was like, fire whites are a thing. Ice whites are a thing. We see the others. We see the ice zombies. Fire whites are very much a thing. What does that potentially mean? And it's interesting because George said that in a time when the show was in season 6, and season 5 was bad, but not as bad. We hadn't had some of the choices that were made later on in the series. Game of Thrones is still the greatest show of all time. Something that is the greatest thing of all time can still have flaws, right? So before that, George said this, and everybody was excited about it because the show had enough mystery, and you didn't know enough about the ending because we still all thought we're at the very least going to get 10-episode final seasons. This was before they announced they're doing 7 episodes in season 7 and 6 episodes in season 8. So there was a lot of mystery still left. And George is, in my opinion, was trying to hype up the fandom, but also Dan and Dave to be like, there's some specialness to the fact that Jon Snow was brought back using the magic of R'hllor. What does that mean? Right? For the Jon Snow show, hopefully Kit Harington has read a Song of Ice. I'm positive he's read a Song of Ice and Fire. I don't think George would have let him do this if he hadn't been like, and Kit used to work at a bookstore. He's a nerd. Like, he might be short, buff guy now, but he very much was just as nerdy as I am, right? Just not as tall as I am and didn't have as big as of a penis. I'm just kidding. Kit Harington's penis is probably of a similar size to me, but mine is just bigger because I am a taller, bigger person. So naturally, my penis is like 4 to 6 inches larger than Kit Harington's, but he's famous. I'm not famous, right? So anyway, there's some specialness to the fact that fire whites are a thing, right? We almost have zombies of all different elements recreated in the series. And what I mean by that is you have the ice zombies or the ice whites for, the element ice, and you have fire whites. So anybody that's brought back in the Lord of the Light, you have Beric Dondarrion, who is the most prominent fire white right now. There was the idea that Sandor was a fire white or could be a fire white because he joins the Brotherhood Without Banners, and he's so near death from the gangrene and from not eating enough chickens that the only way that he's saved is because the Maester saves him. So really, for the TV show, he's not a fire white, right? He's afraid of fire, but the process that we use to bring him back as the Gravedigger could make him a white or a wraith or a zombie of another. Well, a wraith is not really a zombie. If you want to go super technical, wraiths have more of a spiritual aspect to them too. So they're less of a physical being like a zombie. They also have like, don't they have ectoplasm? I don't know. I'm basing all of my fantasy stuff for that shit off of Elder Scrolls Online. Which is kind of like this background. I don't know if anybody said this in the chat yet. In the background, this is Twilight. This not the movies or the books. No, Twilight from Kingkiller Chronicles. I just had sex with Florian all night, and I'm still in the Twilight. I am Kvothe Shadowcore, the Bloodless. I'm just kidding, but yeah. So getting back on track here, Kit Harington's penis is nowhere near as big as mine. I'm sure he's got a huge pecker, but it's not as big as mine. Also, go buy one of these t-shirts, please. Anybody watching this that wants to buy one? It means something special. I've explained it twice, so I don't want to have to explain it again. Also, about to do a giveaway for this. I can only do one drawing giveaway, or it's not a drawing, it's a painting, but I can only do one printed copy of it this week because my printer is out of ink. So next week, I'll be able to get some more ink, and I'll be able to do more for the next live stream drawing giveaway. It's funny. The last thing I printed for it, I was like, oh, this thing's low on ink, but that's pretty good because I printed like 10 things with it. And then just completely forgot about it because I didn't use it for anything. Then when I go to get ready for this live stream to make the copies of this shit, I'm like, oh, well, only one per. And honestly, it won't even look that good. So the person who wins this will probably have it delayed a few days so I can wait until I go out and go buy more ink for my printer and then reprint that because I don't think it has quite enough to make it. There's a lot of red in this. You know what I'm saying? That's Caraxes, by the way. Initially, I was going to give away the original, but I decided not to because every time I show my son, his face lights up, and I'm going to put it in his room. I'm going to use this as the design to when we actually do paint and get their room ready. I'm going to use Caraxes. I'm going to put a big Caraxes in there, but I'm going to make him look more like a dinosaur. He already looks pretty much like a dinosaur too, eh? Oh, we're going to see the T-Rex, little T-Rex there. Ooh. There's already been several people who have won that, and they like it. So that's cool. I'm going to do that in a couple of minutes to finish answering the question. Maybe Sandor is a white of another type he's brought back using, obviously the elder brother uses Maester is healing, so maybe he would be a white of the seven, white of the faith of the seven. So, but yes, Jon Snow is a fire white. That's something special to it. And Daenerys, if she's brought back by Kinvara on the TV show, for sure, fire white. And then also a fire white that rides dragons. And another thing, the fire white could play into the Jon Snow thing because he can't die. And I've said this before. What if the new Jon Snow show, the one way to get rid of having to bring back any of the cast members, Jon Snow can't die and is north of the wall long enough until the Night King does come back, and then he's forced to go back south. And like I said, he's got a bunch of wildlings with him. He's known as their like forever king because he can't die or whatever. He looks really old, and this is really corny, but he tries to go back down south, and the new Night's Watch is like, nah, bro, we ain't having it. So then the whole show is about him waging war with them, and then ultimately being destroyed by the Night King, and then the Night King makes long winters. I don't know, right? But with Daenerys being a fire white, you got to realize with her, she rides dragons. So it's like in the book, if she does die and is brought back through lore, would her dragons be connected with her still? No, probably not. And this is something I just thought of literally right now. So thank you for jogging my brain destiny into me thinking about this. What the fuck happens if her connection with Drogon is broken by her dying? This works for the TV show too. Well, because she's already died in the TV show, so it works more for the TV show. And then that's how Drogon gets a new rider. And then when Daenerys comes back, the connection is severed. So Drogon is like, who is this bitch? You're like, oh, she doesn't reckon. Maybe Drogon will look at her as if the same way Silverwing looks at the whites with Alicent when Alicent is trying to Alicent, not Alicent. Alicent doesn't ride a dragon. There's been like 30 comments of people saying, hold up, Alicent has a dragon? Thank you for leaving the comment. And I guess I should continue to say it like that. But no, Alicent does not have a dragon. Olivia Cook does not have a dragon. She can ride my dragon, but she didn't have one on the TV show. I'm talking about Alicent, the old guy at the beginning of the show, his wife, Silverwing, her dragon. Refused to fly her north of the wall when she was dilly-dallying up there because she got bored waiting for Jaehaerys to show up. She tries to fly her dragon north of the wall, and he's like, no. And then 150 years later, White Walkers, we know, are coming. Winter is coming. So what if it's the same thing? What if when Daenerys comes back, Drogon doesn't want anything to do with her? So what if instead of dragons, Daenerys just has a massive army and Jon Snow mounts Drogon to try to fight her or something, and Drogon's like, yo, she came back. That's my mom, but something's not right. I don't know. Getting way too corny here. But thank you for submitting that, even though it was late as destiny. I'm just kidding. I think that was it. All right, so let me jump into the chat. Let's see. Wait, what in the heckin'? Still, where's the chat? Where did it go? I clicked pop out chat and then closed the pop out chat and then it disappeared. So I'm going to have to, oh wait, that's because that's not the live stream. Stupid. All right. I got it. It's going to give a quick shout out to everybody watching this in the chat right now. That's typing. Let's see. Shout out to Alexander Morningstar, Daryl, The Omen, DJP, JMJ, JS Holgerson, Laura Estrada, and Mixed Queen Destiny Phillips 420. That's it. Laura says, I cut my finger on a knife. What did I miss? Holy crap. Are you all right? I hope so. Why won't it let me bring up the YouTube chat? Because this chat is really buggy. The one from the streaming software, always late. Persephone says, are you open to callers? What do you mean? Like someone calling in? That might be something that I could do. I know I did that like one time when I was streaming with a buddy of mine when I first started Raised to Alba in Ricey For the Brotherhood without banners, we took call-ins. Is that what you mean by call-ins? That could be really the only interpretation of that. Cyrus Gaming says, love the stream, brother. Appreciate it, man. Claudia Harris says, hello. Hello. And me. It's all good. Deeper than I thought for cutting your finger. Just a deep cut. Finger still intact. Thank goodness. Well, if you had lost a finger, you might have gained a dragon. So, did you gain a dragon or perhaps a new puppy or a cat? Here, I answered your question, Trisha. Thank you for joining us. The Blood Raven one. I think that was like 20 minutes ago. What's up, man? A fair exchange indeed. I might have lost a finger, but I've gained a dragon. I think a finger is more of a trade-off. I'd have to contemplate losing my eye more so. But yeah, tis a fair exchange. And then 10 years later, hold strong, give me that eye, boy. You ain't going nowhere. I'm like, what, did you forget everything? No problem, no problem. Thank you for your support on Patreon. Love the stream, man. Been watching since 2017. Nice. Northern women scare me, and I live far north Canada. Especially those Mormont women. They sleep with bears. Second son's rule, hell yeah. Well, it depends on who depends on depends on which one. Maegor, not the ideal second son. Okay. Arya and Brightflame, not necessarily a second. Actually, no. Isn't he the second born son of Maelor? But yeah, there's definitely bad examples of second sons, but yes. He is good. Ashara. Bro, where are we going today with the stream today? What do you mean? Everywhere. I went everywhere. Especially to your mother's house. I'm just kidding. Maybe I'm not. Maybe me and your mother got a thing going on. White Walkers are beautiful. Exactly. They look like ice beings. Everybody's like, Lord of the Rings elves are gorgeous. Like when they're cast by someone who doesn't look pretty, everybody's like pissed off. But here's the thing. White Walkers, like if I was given the choice of who to have sex with, as far as like otherworldly creatures, I'd choose a White Walker before I chose an elf. The elf would be a very close second. Matter of fact, I would probably stop halfway and go with the elf because the Ice Woman was too cold. Too cold. Yes. Well, no, White Walkers are beautiful. Nettles is just the first one to figure out you can tame pets with snack. No, I don't like that. I don't know why. No one has ever gotten a dragon without having blood of the dragon. And it's silly to think that Nettles, like, okay, she fed it sheep, and people are like, oh, she could have potentially used poison. But the only reason why people think that is because George insinuates that in Fire and Blood and in World of Ice and Fire by saying people think this brown girl couldn't have possibly taken a dragon. She must have been a woods witch and tricked the dragon. But don't fall for that trap. That's nonsense. She's blood of the dragon. Blood of the dragon just doesn't always look how you think they do. Like, I know you don't think this, Trisha Ann, but I'm saying Black people can ride dragons too, right? Especially in George's world, it shows you that just because someone is half Targaryen doesn't mean they'll necessarily have Targaryen features. Jocelyn Baratheon, Rhaenys Baratheon in the books, right? Also, if Tyrion is a Targaryen, right? There's a few Targaryens that are described as having half, I can't think of her name right now, Ilaria Targaryen or something like that. She's described as one of the most beautiful Targaryens. She's like half black hair or something and like multicolored eyes. So it's just George is just it's his way of showing you you don't necessarily have to have standard looks to ride dragons, because he gives you that example in the same story with Rhaenyra's children, the Strongs, who have black hair, not Targaryen hair. It just shows you don't have to look like they ride dragons. They ride Veermax and Irrex, right? So you don't necessarily have to look, and then also the other ones, right? And then Joffrey's dragon. I can't think of his name right now. Morning? No, I always think of Morning. Is it Morning? Might actually be Morning. But they don't look like Targaryens, and they still ride dragons. It's the same idea with Sheepstealer. George just took it a step further by saying, "Oh yeah, she's brown, she's black, so she did it too." Like, the one thing we know about House Targaryen before the Doom is that obviously 12 years before that, Daenerys was a dreamer, and she's like, "Let's get the hell out of here because the Doom's coming." But also, they weren't that powerful. Targaryens were dragon riding families, but there was hundreds of dragon riding families, right? If not in their heyday, close to 1,000, right? So the Targaryen, there's a totem pole to dragon riding. Maybe the lower houses on the totem pole are given less access to premier dragon breeding eggs. So, like when they're trying to, and I've said this so many times, I consider it canon now. The Targaryens would breed certain dragons for specific tasks. So, red dragons were breeded to be warriors. That's why Caraxes is so ferocious. Same with Melees, right? Melees takes on 2 dragons, right? And kills one and survives enough to kill one, but Melees obviously dies in the end. But Caraxes kills Vhagar. Vhagar is a third and a half the size of, like, almost double the size or whatever of Caraxes. So red dragons for sure were bred to be ferocious. And then you have black dragons, the 2 ones that you come off the top of your head. Balerion and Drogon, they're known for their size and being like winged shadows. So, like, when they fly over a city, they lay half the city in a shadow. So black dragons were bred for their size, red dragons for war, for being warriors in Pacific. So in the totem pole of houses in Valyria, we don't know what all of them look like, but I can guarantee you if there were hundreds, and like I said, if at one point thousands, they probably all weren't the same skin color. What for sure you could say is that they all had purple eyes and silver gold hair for sure. But yeah, I don't like that. And also you got to realize Nettles is just super smart because she knows that it's dangerous for someone of the blood like herself. And then also Aemon, when Aemon's approaching Vhagar, when Vhagar just lost Lena, TV show and in the books, it's nice for House of the Dragon to be able to say TV show and the books, because you can't do that for half the shit for Game of Thrones. But she goes to try. I'm sorry. It's dangerous for Aemon, who is of the blood of legitimate predator, for him to approach Vhagar. So of course it's going to be dangerous for Sheepstealer, who's a wild dragon, never been ridden. That's the only thing. Dragon's favorite food is sheep. That's what she's feeding it. And then also it's wild. Sheepstealer at that point never been ridden. So, well, Nettles is just not an idiot. Nettles is not stupid. Nettles feeds the dragon, allows it to grow accustomed to his presence, and then mounts the dragon. All the other people that do that to the wild dragons lose an arm, lose their life, never mount the dragon, right? That's the only why Nettles was feeding it sheep, because it's the dragon's favorite food. And even though she's of the blood, she still has risks when approaching the dragon. Hopefully that didn't sound like a jackass answering that. They have opiates like milk of the poppy, but they never shown anyone puffing yet on anything. But I hope to. I think the one reference to weed I could think of is in Game of Thrones. In Daenerys' third or I always say third or fourth is one of Dany's POVs in Game of Thrones. When she's in Baz Dothrak, they throw a pile of herbs onto a flame, and then it smokes up the hut, and then Daenerys relaxes. That's like the one example. But like in Lord of the Rings, gillyweed. We see Gandalf smoking weed in Lord of the Rings, and he's like talking about, yeah, this is some good shit. Salt on fire. George didn't really do that, except for, like I said, like this person just said with the opiate, the milk of the poppy, then you also have poppy wine, right? There's different drafts of like the poppy plant itself, but for weed, that's the only, and I've read the main series of A Song of Ice and Fire I'm on my 7th time right now. I've got like an hour and a half left in the audiobook for Clash of Kings. Then that'll be my 7th time reading that book. And the one example that I can think of is in the first book. Some queer herbs are thrown onto the fire, smoke place, and Daenerys' mind is altered slightly. I think people start dancing and laughing or something. That's like the one example I can think of. Uh, I want to see how dragon and riders bond, like a relationship formed and growing. For sure, we're gonna get to see that with through nettles for sure. Yes, we kind of already saw that too. Just a little that one scene when they go into the dragon pit in Arax with Vermax, and they're like talking about how, hey, uh, make sure, like the dragon tamers are basically telling Lucerys, or I guess Jacaerys, right? Jacaerys, once Vermax bonds to you, you'll be able to use certain words. Like they're kind of showing that, but ultimately they had to set up the show in the first season. So now in season 2, since they know that they probably can, they know that people want more expanded on the story, we probably are going to get to see something like that. Oh, there's a question too, a topic that I missed from Destiny on Patreon, and she said, if they get back together and continue the Targaryen line, will the kids have powers or will they be undead as well? Like if Daenerys and Jon Snow, uh, if they come back on the TV show, well, Daenerys mentions in the books how she's barren, but that's just because that's what Miri Mazdur tells her. And you gotta realize Miri Mazdur says this stuff when she realizes she's about to, burn alive, and Daenerys is no longer her friend. Um, she never really considered Daenerys her friend anyway because she did what she did. But I've also went on a whole Miri Mazdur tangent too about how she initially probably tried to save Khal Drogo. He's just too much of an idiot to follow her medical advice, and that's why he ended up dying. And then she was ultimately like, "Oh, you still don't want to listen to me, even though I told you the right thing to do." It sounds like it was she gave him an astringent to kill the germs, and it's not necessarily supposed to be comfortable because it's his body's supposed to be alert and fighting, right? That's basically what she was doing. To me, that sounds like legitimate medical advice. Khal Drogo didn't follow that, got drunk off the poppy wine, and his immune system dropped down to shit, and then he died. So, Daenerys, uh, anyway, she takes her words like, you can't ever have kids again until the sun sets in the east and rises in the west or whatever, the opposite. Like, basically, when mountains move and turn into dust, you'll have kids. And then also, you'll have 3 betrayals, one for love, one for blood, one for money or whatever. She takes that to heart, but you got to realize that she's being told that by someone who is dying horribly, is no longer, her friend, and like ultimately is trying to just do whatever they can to hurt the person that's hurting them as much as they're being hurt. So I don't know if she can't actually have kids. If she dies and then comes back, probably not. I don't think Jon could procreate neither, because then that brings to question. Well, maybe, because then you'd have a whole race of, maybe that's what the Fire Whites are, or the White Walkers. Maybe the White Walkers were people, and then killed, they died, and then they were brought back using the old god or the Children of the Forest magic. So Jon hasn't been brought back in the books yet, and I've mentioned that potentially he could, and I'm sure other people have too, that Breanne could potentially be the one that brings him back through the help of Bloodraven, and they resurrect him through the old god magic. That would be one of the only ways that Jon could become the Night King. Maybe that's how White Walkers initially were started. Obviously, the Children of the Forest created them, but maybe they would get sick and wounded and dying and dead. First men heal them with the ice magic or the ice god, or I'm sorry, the old god magic, and they became I. That's kind of what the origins of White Walkers are. So it's possible that they can't. That's the only way they can continue their line is by making more White Walkers that way. So they can't procreate because they're undead technically. So they have to create another. It's kind of what happens to Daenerys in the House of the Undying chapter. They're like The only reason why she sees dwarves suckling over is because she saw the little dwarf in the door right before she went in, and that freaked her out. And then she's also takes the really potent mushroom. It's like it's the shade of the evening, but I just call it mushroom tea, right? So that's why she sees all that stuff. But ultimately, when she reaches the final level and she sees the White Walkers that are over in Essos, known as the Undying, they start to try to turn her into one, basically. Like they tear her flesh, they rip her gown off, they bite her. And then ultimately, Drogon comes in and burns them, right? But they're trying to turn her into one of them. And that's the only way they can continue on, is, or the only way they can make more of them is by turning people. So maybe that's ultimately what happens with Jon and Daenerys. So they become, I don't know. In a fan fiction, for sure, they would become the Ice Queen and the Night King, and they would go north of the wall, and they would, raise a civilization of ice people until the world grew a certain way again, and they try to make their way down south. So um there's always some random bot in the chat that has that links it. I know no one is going to click that, but does it not let the moderators block? Does it not let people that I've made moderators block those? I don't think so, because I've never seen anybody blocking them. I wonder if that even if y'all even have that ability through YouTube. Um, so I know I initially said that this was going to be 3 hours, but we're at 2 hours, and that's how long most of them have been. So I'm gonna do the giveaway, and then I'm gonna get out of here. Everybody that is watching right now, remember you have to, and this is only fair because everything that I'm about to ask you to do is free, right? That's how I make that. That's how I rationalize that. Rather, you have to be subscribed here publicly to me on YouTube, and obviously you have to be typing in the chat right now so I could see, to pick the winner. And then also follow me on Instagram at Sir_Hunts. It's linked down below in the description, and then follow me on Twitter. And message me on Twitter or on Instagram, whoever's about to win this, and I'll send it to you. There's still, I know Brian Thrasher hasn't gotten his yet, and he won in not the last live stream, but the live stream before that. He still hasn't gotten his yet. And then there's a couple of other people, but there's also people who won that have gotten theirs already. So I'm not bullshitting when I say this, and I am people. Just so happens that there's 60 people watching right now. I have 80 patrons, and most of them are probably patrons. So if the person who wins is a patron, it's not something that I'm saying like. Also, if you join my patron, you get digital copies of this, which I've messaged everybody that's been on my patron for a certain amount of time, and I've asked them if they wanted me to send them copies of this. Like the North Bus Remember, who's in the chat right now, I asked him if he wanted a copy of this as well. So it's not just random people or patrons that are watching live that win these. I try to keep it as random as possible. So usually, and I'll do this now, pick a number 1 through, instead of 100, I'll make it easier. 1 through 30, 1 through 100, it takes too long to find somebody picking that. So I'm going to type the number right now onto my calculator. And then I'll show you guys just so everybody knows. All right. So, well, no, that's too high. So 1 through 40. All right, so I got the number, and I'll keep my hands up until I pick the person's name in the chat. Let me actually pull up the chat first. And it's for a drawing of Crexes. It's not a drawing. I keep saying drawing. I painted this. I drew it first, and I haven't really done that with my paintings. Well, I've done it with a few of them, but it's not that great. But if you're a fan of me, I think it's a good prize, and I'll send it to you. You just got to give me your address. Like I said, once you win, send me a message on Twitter or on Instagram. You have to follow me on both of those, and then also subscribe to me here on YouTube. But that's how you win. So 1 through 40, and please start typing in the chat now. I'm gonna scroll until I see someone with a number. But I'm trying to hold my hands up, but it's hard for me to hold my hands up because I need to scroll. But I have not changed the number. It's still on my phone, so I'm not like texting or anything. I'll just hold this hand right here. So 1 through 40. And also, if you've already won, please don't try to win again because that's not fair. Like if you won recently, and I've only been doing these for like 3 weeks, don't type again because that's not fair. Um, please. Oh, it only lets you silence them. The person who keeps posting that for my moderator. All right. Well, thank you guys for silencing them because I didn't see them comment anymore. The sex chat 69.site. I come up with a better username if you want to spam, try to trick people into clicking on your link, which I don't even know how they're able to post links in the chat. That's how you know it's a bot because they somehow route. The only people who are able to post links are moderators. So, all right. The number is written down, but the person who has already won is still trying to win again. I think you know I'm talking about Destiny. Yours is on your way. Stop typing the numbers in the chat because you already won. Yours is on the way. Yeah, no, keep guessing until you get it right. Winterfell 26 said, I thought we just get one guess. No, just keep guessing. It's not funny. I'm trying to yeah. Sexbot mod conspiracy. Exactly. D-Boy says 1. That's not it. I have scrolled all the way to the bottom. But if you've already won, please don't try to win again because that's not fair for people who haven't. Am I gonna have to do like 1 through 10? Just do all the numbers. Everybody, just do all the numbers. I bet you that it will get the number. Please. 1 through 40, by the way. I don't know if I've 1 through 40. Any number 1 through 40. If everything that's been typed in the chat except for somebody who's already won. Come on, just scroll back up. Someone's gonna say, yeah, Osiris Gaming. Osiris Gaming. You won, dude. And you just joined to be a member as well. So that's fucking hell of timing. Did you wait to type 36 because you saw what Destiny typed and you heard me say that Destiny just won last week? She's trying to win again. She won the first like I was live stream with Indie Geek last week. She won the first I did like 3 different tries. She won the first one. But yeah. So yeah, shout out to Osiris Gaming. Appreciate you joining. If you're unaware, channel member means you get to watch all of my videos ad-free. Now, these live streams, you probably watched an ad if you watch this live, like you clicked on it, but after this, it won't be monetized either at all, because they'll demonetize it permanently, but it will for sure be demonetized for the next 48 hours, which is the only amount of time that YouTube will promote it in their algorithm. And you may be like, well, what does that even mean? Well, it just means that there's no ads playing on this. So there's no ad revenue being made. So that's why I try to promote my Patreon as much as possible. And that's only if you're a fan of my stuff. I'm not asking for money. I mean, I am, but I think I offer enough, 21 episodes, 10 hours almost of exclusive stuff. And then also I've started uploading my live streams. So these things, the audio version, so that anybody who wants to watch this that doesn't watch it live can play it through the Patreon app, and there's obviously never going to be any ad that plays on it, even if it gets remonetized on YouTube. And also, I upload twice a week right now, but for a while I was doing 3 or 4 times a week of just chapter POV breakdowns. And then this is the most important part, the podcast is called Leaks and Lore. So once they start filming for House of the Dragon, I will be talking about everything that happens safely on Patreon. You gotta understand. The last time I talked about dragon saddles, which was the most exciting fucking thing about House of the Dragon before obviously it came out and we saw the other cool things, was saddles. Because Daenerys would not go into the final battle, like go to try to take King's Landing, go try to kill the White Walkers without figuring out some sort of saddle situation, because Tyrion Lannister, right, makes it a really big deal about him building his saddle for himself because of obviously he's a dwarf, and then also for Breanne. And then you have to realize like saddle, Daenerys will need one because she can barely hold on to Drogon. Like, yeah, she holds on to Drogon in the books, but also it's like it's an apparent need for a saddle. And then when we saw leaked pictures of the saddle, I did a video on it and I got a strike on my channel. And for 6 months, I couldn't. Obviously I uploaded videos, but One more of those, and my channel's gone. The whole thing that I've been working on for 7 years, I've made 800 videos. Each of those videos is an average of 15 minutes. When you add in the live streams, that's like you could probably watch all 800 videos on loop on YouTube for 3 weeks, maybe, without having to watch something else. I think, I don't know. It's a lot of time and stuff. And also, I'm a big fan, so I would do it anyway. But what was the whole point of that point? I don't remember. Oh, yes, the saddle, the strike on my channel. So you cannot strike my patron. So when the leaks happen, if it's pictures of stuff, if it's stuff that I've been doing for years, like this is all I pretty much do. Game of Thrones, I knew Daenerys was going to die 1 year and 1/2 before it happened. So did several other people online. This person sent this leak to all of us. But here's the thing. If someone does that, I'm going to make a video on it because why not? It's, you got to realize nothing is confirmed until it airs on our screens. And these TV shows are so amazing. We have to go 2 years without shit in between. So, like, if you don't want to spoil the show, well, then don't watch videos like mine. People are still guessing numbers. Let me pick a winner real quick. 36 is the number. So whoever the... Oh, no, Osiris. You already won. Why are people still guessing numbers? Osiris won. What am I talking about? Y'all traded. Casey, you try to trick me, buddy. But yes, you cannot strike my patrons. Know what I'm saying? My penis could strike my patron. Like if I put a picture of my penis on, I might get a strike on my patron. I think that might be the only thing that would get my patron in trouble. If I did like a leaked picture of my dick and balls. If I did that, no more picture. All right. Osiris Game, you won, my dude. I want to thank every single person for watching this live stream. I was in Twilight. I still am in the Twilight Forest. You might have been like, "What? The audio just went out." Yes, it did, but that's because Florian called me back. So thank you for watching. Please slap a like on this video. Like is going to be however many likes people that are watching this decide to give me. Usually I say 420 because weed. And then also leave a comment down below. That's really crucial. Please leave a comment down below. I've talked about enough things where you should have something to say to the things that I've said. Also, if there's something that I said and I sounded dickish about, let me know down below in the comments because it's always good to get feedback like that and learn. Like I watch a good chunk of these live streams, so I know where I was either extra annoying or where I thought or where I think I'm really funny. So that way I know, how to continue doing that stuff. Let me know all that down below, not just one thing. Like I usually say, oh, please just leave a comment. It helps the algorithm. Yes, and that's true. But also give me solid feedback so that I can improve as a creator here on YouTube. Along that, thank you to every single person for watching this live, and thank you to every single person who watches it afterwards. Also, super special shout out to Brandy Reed. She's a member of my Dragonlord tier over on Patreon. Patreon.com/reviews. Then also special shout out, and these people were in the chat. I think Brandy, I need to make her a mod. I'm not sure if she was in the chat. But North Must Remember is a member of North Must Remember is a member. North Must Remember is a member of my Patreon on a tier known as the Dragon Knight tier, right? So Dragon Lord, Dragon Knight. And also on that tier, Heart of Inspiration is as well. She has a YouTube channel just like North Must Remember. Please go subscribe to them. I think Heart of Inspiration was working right now, so she couldn't make it to the stream. It's also my fault for moving it last second. And then also Breanne Johnson, and I think I've seen her type it a few times. So thank you for joining those tiers, and then also thank you for watching this live. So please, if you're watching this and you want to join my Patreon, consider doing that. Thank you to every single member of my Patreon, not just those 2 tiers. It's just part of the reward is that you get your name shout out in the videos. So thank you for watching. If that's all you can do, that's the best thing you can do. Because if you didn't watch these videos, I wouldn't be a YouTuber. I wouldn't have a Patreon, and I wouldn't be able to do things like give away art, and people get excited about it. And genuinely, Like the dude Grant that won the last one. Obviously, everybody's excited to get it, and I've only given away a few people. But Grant, he looked excited as shit, and I was like, dude, you're excited because I made that. So that's really cool. So I wouldn't be able to do any of that kind of stuff if I didn't have a YouTube channel. So if all you can do is watch, thank you for watching. I know I sound like a somebody who feels entitled probably sometimes when I say like, oh, go join my Patreon. YouTube's doing their thing to me. I mean, they are, but also I don't need to talk about it all the time, right? I don't not. Wait, damn, I didn't have in broadcast lined up. Thank you for watching. I don't not. Does this look like I got a dick in front of my face? That's what it kind of feels like. These sure SM7Bs. I don't not.